6th, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable meeting. I'm Steve Alverson. I serve as the facilitator of this roundtable. It is a meeting that's facilitated. My job is to try to keep us on time, make sure we stay within our agenda items, and hopefully end at around the 4 o'clock time out of respect of everyone's valuable time. Also, try to keep the meeting respectful, and I understand that everybody has different points of view, but we're all here working on the same problem. And with that, I will turn it over to the chair.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. First, I am going to do a call to order and ask for identification of members present. I think normally I've worked this way just to shake things up a bit. I'll do the roundtable members first, starting on my right with Cynthia. From?
City of Santa Cruz.
Thank you.
So apparently you have to push it twice, maybe, to get green. Clear or red?
Try mine.
Oh, okay.
Hello? Hello.
We can just use this one. Yeah. All right. Kristen Peterson, City of Capitola.
Carlos Palacios, Santa Cruz County.
Lisa Matichak, City of Mountain View.
And Vice Chair for the time.
Steve.
Mary Lynn Bernald, City of Saratoga, Chair, and welcome all.
Steve Alverson, facilitator.
Michelle Wu, Mayor of Los Altos.
Kathy Watanabe, City of Santa Clara, and welcome.
And thank you, Kathy, for hosting. Anita Enander, City of Los Altos.
Steve Preminger, County of Santa Clara.
Glenn Hendricks, council member in Sunnyvale.
Lydia Cruz, City of Palo Alto.
I understand Kathleen Lee from Congressman Panetta's office is on the line. Kathleen?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tom Pike?
Yeah, Tom Pike from Congressman Conda's office.
And Karen Chapman with Congresswoman Eshi's office.
Thank you. And from the FAA?
Hi, good afternoon. Flavi Garcia, Senior Advisor, Regional Administrator's Office. Good afternoon. Tamara Swan, Deputy Regional Administrator.
Good afternoon, Joseph Burt, FAA Contractor for Operations Support Group in Seattle.
And from SFO? Whoops, it happened twice?
Bert Ganong, SFO.
Great, thank you very much. I see walking in right now, we have Steve Scharf. No problem, we're just finishing up the introductions, and we'll get you a name tag in just a second. And we have little tricks on the microphone, Steve, so you may have to hit it twice to get it to go green, so we can record your voice.
I can't remember, maybe I'm not even the alternate anymore.
You're mayor, so you still have that, yes.
Okay, yeah, because
So if
these
you-
two can never come, so.
If you would identify yourself and your city, please.
Okay. Oh, Stephen Scharf, Mayor of Cupertino.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to turn this part of the agenda over to our facilitator consultant.
Some of the new microphones may not be working, and so as they figure that out, they may have to share.
Okay.
Okay.
We are.
So I've just been told that some of the new microphones may not be working, so if it's not working, please share. This meeting is being video recorded and audio recorded, so that would be great. Again, welcome, Steve Alverson, facilitator. I did forget in my welcome and review that if you are a member of the public and you would like to speak on any item, please fill out one of these white speaker cards and give it to Evan, who's walking across the back of the room. He will help organize them for us. Don't bring them up to me or the chair. It will completely throw us off. Thank you. The next item, number 3, is the election of the chair and vice chair. We do this on a 12-month basis. We sat the current chair and vice chair at our first meeting in February of 2019, which means it's now time to seat the new chair and vice chair. Under Robert's Rules of Order, we have the ability to do that, elect the chair and vice chair at this present time, and either have them immediately serve, or, as often is the case in groups like this, they could begin serving at the next meeting. In essence, the chair and vice chair prepared for this meeting, and so a new chair wouldn't necessarily have to step in. So with that in mind, I would open the floor for nominations of the chair. We'll take the chair first, and then we'll do the vice chair after that. Recognize Glenn.
Yes, so I move Mary Lynn just continue.
Okay, we have a motion for Mary Lynn to continue.
I would like to nominate also. How does that work?
Okay, can you turn your, and speak a little louder, Lydia?
I'd like to make a nomination also.
Please do.
Anita Inander, please.
Okay.
I'll second. Oh, okay.
And we actually don't need seconds for the
Okay,
nominations
sorry.
now.
Not
We just need names.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have Mary Lynn continuing. We have Anita. Are there any other names being put forward? Okay. If not, we can go ahead and vote on the chair and vice chair.
But do they want to make statements first? Or is
Yes,
that not
let's go
allowed?
ahead and have them make statements. Thanks, Steve.
I believe Anita is nominated second, so she should go first because that will be the vote that will be called first.
Thank you. Thank you for nominating me. I have 3 more years to serve on my current term. I will not be occupied with trying to run for re-election this year. So I have, I think, time to devote to this. This is a priority for me. Many of you know that I volunteered when I was elected to the City Council to serve on this committee because my husband is a general aviation pilot. I've spent a lot of time in this airspace, and I feel I understand a lot of the technical side of this pretty well. So it's an honor to be nominated, and if I'm elected, I think the most important thing will be for us to determine over the next few months whether we can get the energy to go forward past our current budget and agreement that many of our cities have, and recognizing that when we talked about this the last time, there were a number of cities who were not willing to sign up for an 18-month edition, but rather only 6 months. So I think it's a critical next few months ahead of us, and I'd be pleased to lead the organization as we determine whether and what our future would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, for volunteering. I have served for the last year as chair, and in this position, as we have set up the foundation for this body moving forward, which is essential, I have handled far more than many people have seen on the surface. There has been a tremendous challenge in getting us set up because we did not have a venue for so long, and I recognize the concerns of the community. With that said, as background, I did serve both on the Select Committee and the ad hoc for South Flow, so I have intimate knowledge with both of those, and I do understand what the issues are behind that. I also have a very good basis of knowledge on all of the flight issues that are involved and that come here. I have had the connections with the FAA, I have had connections with the congressionals, and I have worked very hard, and I hope you would believe in a fair way to represent all of you, given the little hiccups that we have had along the way in getting our body up and going. Like Anita, I am not running for office, and I have another 3 years to serve. And I would hope that you would recognize the dedication and effort that I have put in this and would vote for me as the chair.
Thank you both. And we do, in fact, take in order the second nomination first. So I'd like to see a show of hands for all those in favor of Anita as the chair. Please raise your hand. 1, 2.
Like both are nominated and both serving as co-chair?
We have a vice chair, so that'll be the next election.
So we'll have to choose one. Also, the bylaw, or does it go with the rotation or purely nominate? I apologize for that. I was talking to Steve Arison. Too easy, he's right next to me. So the first of all, my question is it possible to have a co-chair? And Steve answered, we have chair and vice chair. My second question is, I was distracted. I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we were in the process of voting for Anita. If we could see a show of hands for support of Anita. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Against? Nita? We don't necessarily need to do that, but I and let's go ahead and move to Mary Lynn. A show of hands for support for Mary Lynn as chair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8.
8. So Mary Lynn has been elected chair, and thank you, Anita, for running, and let's go ahead and open the floor for nominations for the vice chair.
I would like to make a nomination for Ed Boderoff, who couldn't be here today. And the reason for my nominating him is because I feel for us to be a valid organization, we should have representation both from Santa Cruz and Santa Clara.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, yes.
So I'd like to nominate Anita Enander for vice chair.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other nominations from the floor? Okay, so we have 2 candidates. Any questions or statements about that? Steve? Could you speak in the mic? Thank you.
Do we know that Ed's willing to serve? I've been in many meetings when people who aren't present have that distinction.
Yeah, I've spoken with Councilmember Botorff, and he is willing to serve in the vice chair seat, and he's let me know that he will be at the next meeting. He just wasn't able to attend this time, so I'm here on his behalf. But he is willing to serve as the vice chair.
And that, by the way, is Kristen Peterson, who's representing Capitola. Okay.
Call for the vote.
Yes. So again, following the previous format, second nomination is for Anita as vice chair. May I see a show of hands? 1, 2, 4. Looks like we have 4 for Anita.
5.
5. Thank you. And for Ed Boderoff as vice chair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7?
8.
8. Obviously, I can't see people in there. Thank you.
Welcome to my world.
Thank you. Therefore, the roundtable has seated both the chair as Mary Lynn and Ed Boderoff as the vice chair for the next 12-month period. Thank you all for your vote. And I guess, Mary Lynn, since you're the current chair, you're stuck running the meeting. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure you
Thank
don't want to do it, Anita? No. Okay, well, I know we can count on you to give us your input and share your wisdom. Thank you. All right, the next item on this is public comment for this item number 3. And Jennifer Landesman, I see that you have submitted a card, and we will continue to rotate your card. Steve, could I ask how many minutes?
Let's do 2 minutes on this.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to touch on the issue of continuity if there isn't enough support for this roundtable to continue. I've heard that brought up. And it's really a question that I would like for you to relay to the Congress members and to the FAA, which is if cities don't want to participate, just like we're convening now and San Jose is not participating, whoever is left that is interested, will the FAA still engage with that roundtable, whoever it may be? That's question number 1. The other issue that is also for the FAA is that the FAA is defining community as roundtables, and that's really inappropriate because community is the broader public, and the procedures that are being run through the roundtables are not having adequate outreach to the community. So all of the things that are published by the FAA of an intended community engagement plan of letting the broader community know are not happening. Certainly this roundtable isn't doing that work either. So I would like to also ask you to please relay this question to the Congresspeople, to FAA, about the ombudsman position, which is a new law and it's not being implemented as intended. The FAA has a reputation for implementing laws according to how they feel it should be implemented, but that was not the intention of the law. We need a real ombudsman. And I don't necessarily disagree with having community engagement officers. That's a really great support. But we need an actual ombudsman who is responsive to the communities, not just elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I am going to ask that for the public on your comments, if it could be on the topic. We just had the election of the chair and vice chair, and that wasn't quite completely related to that. Just so that we can keep the meeting moving, Jennifer, you could do that during the public comment period at the end, and we could cross that off. I would appreciate it. Robert?
I wasn't planning to make a comment on this topic, and it's really more related to the process. I had thought that public comment was invited before there was a vote to be held. In the spirit of the Brown Act, there should be deliberations which are based on public input, and that didn't happen this time. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 4, the FAA's technical presentation on SUNNE 1, the conventional departure, and PIRAT 2-star in response to our roundtable inquiries. Thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon. My name again is Joseph Burt. I'm with Operations Support Group up in Seattle. As Marilyn said, I'm going to cover SUNNE. I'm going to briefly discuss Loop, and then I'm going to move on to PIRAT. Thank you. So as you can see, there's the agenda, what I just discussed. So SUNNE 1 procedure is for Oakland departures off runway 28 left, 28 right, and 30. Considered a conventional departure, utilizes radar vectors for each aircraft that departs. It's for southbound, nighttime departures from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And this procedure was implemented or published on January 30th, 2020. So now I'm going to kind of recap. So the SUNNE procedure is basically the Oakland 120 departure. So here I'm going to recap. So the Oakland 120 departure was intended to keep aircraft over the bay and not over populated areas during the initial climb and phase of flight. So departing aircraft on the Oakland 120 will climb in a left-hand turn to 120-degree heading. They'll climb to an altitude that's assigned by air traffic control, and that could vary from aircraft to aircraft. And then they'll continue on that heading until they receive instructions from air traffic control, which could be climb higher, turn, whatever the situation is. So now I'm going to move on to the SUNNE. So now the SUNNE procedure is basically the same thing, intended to reduce flights over populated areas. Was based on where the aircraft are currently flying today. So it's based on the Oakland 120 departure. Departing aircraft will climb in a left-hand turn to 120-degree heading, and then they'll go direct SUNNE waypoint. They will climb to 5,000 feet mean sea level, and then they will continue on the heading to SUNNE, which is a 120, until they receive instructions from air traffic control. So the noise impacts, this one, so the noise impacts basically were looked at. We complied with the NEPA instruction, which is Order 1051 Foxtrot, which is the guidance that refers to DNL. The FAA guidelines for compliance with NEPA is significant impact is an increase of 1.5 dB in an area exposed to aircraft noise of 65 dB or higher. And this basically slide just covers all the different scenarios reference the environmental review. How we calculated the noise impact, basically this procedure was approved based on what they call a traffic test, which basically covers the amount of aircraft that is projected to be on the procedure, the number of operations, particular route, and then the height of the route. So the draft test was used to evaluate the new procedure and amended procedures. In other words, they use this for all the procedures that we put in, not necessarily to finish the procedure, but there's steps that they go through, and this is one of the steps that they go through. So it takes into account the altitudes flown at the procedure route, and then they take the lowest altitude in which they come up with their test. And the operations between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., they're multiplied by 10 to account for low ambient noise. The presence of noise-sensitive receptions near the change is not a requirement of the draft test. So in other words, they don't necessarily take that into account. So again, using the above criteria, this one passed because it did not exceed 1.5 dB in a 65 dB. Cumulative impacts. So this one is important because at the same time we did some amendments to the Quake, changed the Quake 1, made amendments to the Oakland 5. So when we looked at the SUNNE 1, we also took in those impacts, changes to those procedures also as impacts. So it defined as an impact, cumulative impacts, is defined as an impact on the environment, which results in an incremental impact of an action when added to other past, present, or reasonably foreseeable future. So again, like I said, we looked at the Quake, the SUNNE, and the Oakland. So operational data. So it's basically for non-RNAV equipped aircraft. That's what it was designed for. We do not anticipate an increase in operations from what the current Oakland 120 has or had. And the aircraft are anticipated to fly just like they are today. Procedure altitude is, again, 5,000 feet is the cap, and they will fly, they will not go any higher until instructed by air traffic control. And this is a depiction of what the procedure looks like. I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is the actual draft template. And then here's kind of what we did as a graphic to make it a little bit easier to see. Good. And that's all I have on the SUNNE. Any questions on the SUNNE procedure?
Yeah. Thank you for being here today and for the presentation. I do have some questions about this. Firstly, I just want to state that in the packet...
Lydia, I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry, to put your microphone a little closer. We're having trouble hearing you. Thank you.
In the packet, there is a letter from Ms. Gerwin, Rachel Gerwin, in response to Ms. Bernal, which says that the presentation, and that's on page 8 of the packet, it says that presentation of the South Bay arrivals and departures were by the representatives of the FAA. So I went back and I looked for it, but I think it was actually by Steve Alverson. So I first want to point that out. And also, it was on slides that were different from what we saw here today, in particular to the route. And the slides that were used were similar to the ones at San Francisco Roundtable that Steve had used, which takes me to my question on number 1. So in your slide here, on slide number 5, SUNNE 1 procedure design, it says that the design is based on current aircraft flying today. However, if you look at the visual, and if Evan can put up the slide, that was in the December 13/20 letter to Chairperson Bernal that was sent to the FAA. The slide is from Adam Vedder's presentation to the San Francisco Technical Working Group on September 26th of last year, and what was also presented by Steve here at the Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable on October the 23rd last year. When the slide comes up, it's on. No, this is the FOIA. It's actually, I have hard copies, if that makes it easier. Thank you. I think. So we're actually looking at the SFO Roundtable Request 1F. And as you can see, presented at that presentation, the turquoise lines show that Oak 120 departures over land and overpopulated areas. SUNNE 1 is not following the historic ground track. The ground track has been moved, as shown by the new bell-shaped in this diagram. SUNNE 1, as defined in the visual, is over new land and over new populated areas. So with this, what I see is two negative impacts. One is it's moving ground tracks, which means it's moving noise. The FAA's first bullet in page 5 of today's presentation states that SUNNE 1 is intended to reduce flights over populated areas. However, this is not the case if new areas get the ground track and the noise. My understanding is FAA is not moving noise from one community to another. That's the policy. But it seems like this is what's being done. My point number 2 on negative impacts: any use of the bay for Oak 120 departures removes the ability for SFO arrivals to use the bay. This means that the bay cannot be used to mitigate nighttime arrivals such as surfer, bodega, as well as pirate. And this is a problem because a lot of the residents who live under these ground tracks are suffering from the nighttime arrivals from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I have to say, this new SUNNE 1 not only moves noise from where it originally was to another community, if we are looking at this bell shape. It also reduces the opportunity to use the bay to mitigate nighttime arrivals to San Francisco. I hope you can address this. Can you today?
I guess I'm still a little confused on exactly what you're looking at. So you're looking at the bell, the yellow bell outline, and that's what you're using to determine where the aircraft are flying?
Right.
Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Well, this is the presentation that was presented to San Francisco Roundtable.
Correct.
Saying that this is what the ground track is, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot of new land in there that you're shifting noise to.
But
this is not as clean as this one here. So if we're going to use presentations, we should use the true ones. I mean, they're contradicting.
Well, the yellow bell that you're referring to, if it's the same thing I'm looking at, that isn't a flight track.
No, it's not a flight track, but that is areas.
Yeah, that's a protected area. The actual tracks are the ones that are green and purple, and those won't change. Those will be just like they are today.
But aren't they still over land?
No,
And
they're over the bay.
also, a resident has just provided me what happened today it's flying really close to Foster City and right over East Palo Alto, East Menlo Park, Palo Alto, and into Mountain View. And this is, I mean, so we have tracking that shows that you're not flying it today as clean as you have depicted in this picture.
Okay.
So
the thing with this picture that's on the screen right there is, at
Yes.
any point in time, air traffic control can take them off that procedure.
Right.
Any point in time.
Right,
There's
that's-
no requirement for any aircraft to go all the way to
Right.
SUNNE.
And in your presentation, you did say that, you know, at some point, the traffic controllers can allow the pilots to do what they want. However, that goes over land, the potential. And so I really hope that FAA is going to address that and not just say, and give a presentation that shows this clean line and giving the perception that it is going to fly that path. Because when you give permission to the pilots to fly wherever they want, they may fly over land. And this is a nighttime flight.
Okay, I understand.
I need
I
that to
understand what
be
you're saying.
addressed. And then onto my second question. Ms. Gervin communicated to the San Francisco Roundtable when speaking about PIRAT that all procedures need to be RNAV because of NextGen. But SUNNE is a conventional procedure versus an RNAV. Why is that?
Because SUNNE was developed for non-RNAV procedure-equipped aircraft, so you can't build an RNAV and expect non-RNAV equipped aircraft to fly it. So basically what we were doing was proceduralizing the procedure. In other words, it makes life on the pilot and the controller a little bit easier when they have a published route for them to fly on. And it, again, is for non-RNAV, so you can't build an RNAV procedure and expect non-RNAV to fly.
I guess, you know, when it comes to nighttime flights and disturbing people's sleep and everything, is that something that's going to continue, or is that something that will come forward later that FAA will implement, that it can only be used on aircrafts that potentially can fly RNAV?
I guess I'm not understanding the question. Can we impose what?
Can you impose that airplanes that cannot fly RNAV do not fly this route?
No, because this was designed for aircraft without RNAV.
But it's flying at night and over land when you're actually telling them that they can fly wherever they choose.
But that doesn't have anything to do with RNAV.
But also, it's
That's
a next-gen
controller.
procedure that is coming forward. You would think that you would want to make sure that it's not just flying conventional procedures. You know, I mean, I'm having an argument with you right now, which I'm not intending to do, but I need you to visit this and to understand that when you say we're going towards next gen, and you still have aircraft that are flying conventional procedures, then we do have a problem when you're coming up with flight routes that are actually not RNAV and just doing conventional procedures. So it needs to be something that is addressed.
Understood.
And then there was also in Ms. Gerwin's letter about electronic files for SUNNE. There's no mention actually in her letter about electronic files for SUNNE. So it is in her letter on which Ms. Bernal had asked for. Let me see here. Where it addresses getting the data, electronic files for SUNNE altitudes, speeds, the location of waypoints, flight usage data. Is that going to be made available?
Correct. That is not available right now. There isn't enough data to do that. It got implemented like, what is it, 20 days now, 26 days? So there's not enough data yet to gather all that.
And when is that expected that there will be enough? How many days, how many months?
We usually like at least 90 days of data to look at to compare with what's before. And I think in the actual request, I think they asked for 6 months, if I remember correctly.
And after the 6 months, once you get that, how long will it be before you process, analyze, and it's put out to the public? Put forward?
I can't give you an answer on that now. It depends on what the workload is for everybody up there, those type of things. So I can't give you a definite time frame now. But we will work our best to get you guys the information once we have that.
What do you see the updates to the roundtable in terms of what SUNNE wants impacts and what you have observed from SUNNE 1?
What have I observed?
What the FAA observes.
The last time I looked, there was only 6 aircraft that flew it, and I think that was, I want to say it was like the 15th, I think, is when I pulled it, the data, just to look real quick, and there was only 6 aircraft that were actually flew that procedure that was filed for the SUNNE.
So the route that you're flying right now for Oak 120, how do you address the arrivals coming in that we're hoping for the Oak 150s to be over the bay as well? Are they flying
I can't answer
higher?
that question. I'm not part of that. I just looked at the 120 departures. But that's a good question, and I would bring it to Maryland and have Maryland submit it to via the round table to us, and we can probably get you an answer on that.
So that would be a 60 days before we hear back if it's submitted. Thank you.
Yep.
In answer to that, Lydia, we will not be meeting for 60 days either. So I've noted it. And if you would like the specific questions given to me, I would appreciate that.
I'll definitely do that, but
Thank you.
you do see the 60 days
I do.
drags on, and then we do have time frames where we have to respond, so it is a problem.
I appreciate that, yes.
And Madam Chair, if I might, Bert, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to. You have a flight tracking system. You can see aircraft coming off of Oakland, correct?
You are correct.
So is this something that the Roundtable could also turn to you to take a look at for this group to see what's happening at Oakland?
Most definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I'm just going to ask you questions about your presentation of what you just said right here. So if I'm understanding correctly, we're going from 120 departure Oakland to this Sunny 1 procedure, correct? So all the stuff you went through, what's actually different? I mean, and
It's supposed to be exactly the same. We developed the SUNNE to follow exactly what the 120 does. As far as anybody outside of air traffic control or the pilot world, there should be no difference. Inside air traffic in the pilot world, they say cleared via the SUNNE 1 departure instead of cleared via whatever, climbing turn to 120, fly heading, blah, blah, blah. It just makes it easier on the pilot and on the controller.
so in
proceduralize.
theory, instead of the air traffic controls saying, go bop, 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 the pilot just says, here, I'm going to fly Sunny 1. And they're both on the same page of what that is, in theory, of what's going on. Then on your page 9, it says, the second bullet says, no increase in air operations is anticipated. So I assume what you're trying to say there's not an increase in air operations at Oakland.
No, what I'm trying to say is by implementing the SUNNE 1 procedure, we don't expect it to change the amount of aircraft that are from the 120 to the SUNNE. So let's say, speculation, there was 100 aircraft a month that flew the 120. We expect on the SUNNE 1 to be 100 aircraft a month. We don't expect any change just because we went to a SUNNE 1 departure.
So just for us and clarity of communication, that would actually be a more useful thing to say is that the old thing that we're not changing from used to fly approximately X operations a month or whatever, and that we expect that range of operations to be the same. I can understand that, and it's just, if that's what we're trying to say and mean, that's actually a little bit easier to understand.
Okay, I'll
thanks.
take that note. Thank you.
And then I thought I heard you say that there's a cap of 5,000 feet. That
Correct.
They can't. So why would there need to be a cap? Isn't it cool if planes go higher? Especially
is,
from where all our concerns are relative to noise.
And I asked the question, I have not got the answer back on what the specific reason is for the 5,000. So I'm still trying to get that answer. But the procedure was designed for 5,000. My guess is separation, I'm guessing from arrivals inbound.
So that would be great if that could, come back to us through the chair or
Yes.
something like that. I mean, just in general is, I think we're looking for more floors, not caps. That planes don't go below a certain thing, not that planes can't go above a certain altitude. So just in general, as you guys are putting procedures in place, if you guys thought that way, that in maybe in certain circumstances that's not true, but intuitively from where we're concerned about ground level noise, setting floors or minimums that planes are going to be at as opposed to caps that they can be at is just more intuitively positive to what we're trying to accomplish.
Understood. And that was one thing that I wanted to bring up that I forgot when you were talking about all the data sets for the SUNNE departure and stuff like that. One of the main reasons why, and this kind of goes with your question too, Mr. Hendricks, is every aircraft that flies a little bit different than the other one, right? So one guy may climb at, let's say, 300 feet per nautical mile. Another person may climb at 250 nautical feet per nautical mile. So the climb and the turns are all going to be slightly different based on pilot to pilot. So that's why it's important that we get the data, because then we can give you like, hey, we're seeing the base altitude is this, the top's altitude is this, or whatever. So that's why it's important that we get the data, the data set that we need to get you that information.
So that's really good information. Does that mean in the procedure that you've essentially defined a range? Because where you're saying here, each pilot or maybe aircraft has different turning and climbing capabilities. Do you guys define a range of what, because I assume there's a range like of that turning this slow or climbing this slow is not okay, and turning or climbing this fast is not okay. So within this procedure, is there a defined band of where you'd expect aircraft to fly?
There is. It's a minimum climb gradient, which I believe is 200 for this one, 200 feet per nautical mile. So that's a minimum. So other than that, there's nothing. So if someone wants to depart and they want to climb 400, they can do it. There's nothing that prevents them from doing that. When someone departs and they want to climb 500-600 feet per nautical mile, that's on the pilot. That's not on us. The only thing that they can't do is they can't go above 5,000 feet.
And so all the noise and everything on site is based upon what is the minimum?
The noise? I don't know that.
Because you're looking at what the noise impact is, and it's got a 10+ time factor and stuff like that. So is that based on whatever the minimum?
Correct, the lowest
allowable thing that, not what we see planes fly, but what you would allow a plane to fly?
Correct. So it's based off the 200 feet per nautical mile, and it would be the whole way around. So let's say if he flew 7 miles, he's at 1,400 feet. That's the lowest he could be. So that would be the lowest that they look at for environmental.
All right, thanks.
Does that do it for you, Glenn? Okay. Are there any further questions on this? Then, Joe, if you would continue with the PIRAT. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So like I said, I think we're skipping over loop, correct?
Correct.
Clicker. It's not working. Okay, so PIRAT, get my page back here, sorry. So the PIRAT star, just gonna go into the background again real quick. It's in response to 2.3 the 2.3 for the Select Committee on South Bay arrivals. That was part of the reason it was implemented. The other reason is the development of a noise abatement procedure that was implemented in July of 1998. This permitted, asked for aircraft cross over the Woodside VOR at 8,000. So based on those, we came up with the PIRAT star. So a lot of the asks were to look at the Metroplex, NorCal Metroplex PIRAT star and what was changed, what wasn't changed. I can't go back and look at that. I don't know what the final procedure was. I don't know what stage it was in. I don't know any of that stuff. So I can't get into specific details regarding what was done in Metroplex and what was not done. So all I can really talk about is what the difference is between the PIRAT 1 and the PIRAT 2, and then try to answer any questions that you all have based on that. So like I said, these were Select Committee recommendations and for noise abatement procedures. The big change between the PIRAT 1 and the PIRAT 2 was when PIRAT 1 was published, there was supposed to be a crossing altitude at PIRAT. That crossing altitude was at or below 5,000 or 15,000 feet. That was unintentionally left off the procedure. So immediately it was NOTAM'd, not available, and then they had to put in a fix for it. So the fix generated PIRAT 2. So the only thing that changed from PIRAT 1 to PIRAT 2 was the crossing altitude restriction at PIRAT. No other changes were made to the procedure. One thing I'd like this roundtable to be aware of is there will be a gateway entry request put in from air traffic control to modify the PIRAT 2. Unfortunately, I don't have the specifics because it is early on. They are having some issues with air traffic control and pilot controller communications. So we know it's coming. We just don't know exactly what the change entails. So I can't give any specifics regarding that change today. Hopefully, maybe the next meeting or maybe the meeting after that, we might be able to have some specifics. But as of right now, it's very early on. The facility's just getting ready to put it into the gateway. And then we have our whole process we have to follow, looking at the design criteria, all that stuff. But I just wanted to make you aware that there is going to be a change coming down the line. And the other thing that was brought up was the Oceanic arrivals. So this is one of the requests that came in along with the PIRAT star that shows that there has been an increase of Oceanic arrivals. Again, I don't have all the answers yet, other than we know that the PIRAT is increased, which is kind of, I guess, anticipated. When you don't have a star and then you bring in a star, people are going to want to fly the star in, vice vectors or anything like that. So what the actual increase, why there's so many more, I don't have the answer right now. However, we are still looking into it, and as soon as we get that, we'll get that to Mary Lynn and the team. And that's all I have for PIRAT. Is there any questions on the PIRAT?
Glenn?
Yeah, so how long has this been being flown?
The PIRAT?
This procedure that is now, there's some communication challenge and they want to change it.
I don't have the exact time of implementation. I didn't bring that with me, but I want to say a year or two.
Okay, so it's been that long, because I was going to go, you know, did they get their 60 days of comment? How is it, it'll be really interesting to understand if it's something that's being flown for 2 years, that there's some communication challenge, that it's taken 2 years for that to get brought forward. And not only, I'd actually like to understand not only what the change is, but what's the problem? You know, and what is the impact of what that problem means and stuff for what goes on. And then you said here, you know, there's an increase in number of flights and that could be expected. It's kind of the first time I think any of us have heard that. So does someone have an expectation of the number of these operations that they expect? What would be a range of what is normal? Because now we're kind of saying here an increase of the number of operations is expected, normal, whatever word you want to use. So what could people expect the number to be? Would it be normal to see it double in 2 years, or?
That's really hard to say, because really it's the demand on the airports, right? So if they have more demand coming from overseas, then there may be an increase on the PIRAT star as being the route that they come into.
Well,
so it's hard to say. But what I want to specify is I'm speaking to the increased demand on the PIRAT star itself. I don't know about the Oceanic arrivals as far as there is an increase, but I don't know why that increase is there other than demand. And I don't know what the demand is at the airports right now. We're still gathering information. Did I answer your question or no?
You gave a response. I'm not sure it answered what I was trying to find out, which is I'm trying to understand, and this is one of the things we've asked for along the way, is when there's a procedure, if, you know, like I'll just take the last one of the SUNNE one, if it's 100 flights a day or whatever period, would you expect that to change under the new procedure? You know, and what would we expect that to be? I seriously doubt that SFO is getting 1,000 additional flights in this period, because you guys have other capacity challenges. So it's probably, as you said here, it's a star procedure. So other people that were flying somewhere else are choosing to want to use this because it's better for whatever their definition is. When procedures are being created and implemented, that expectation of, are you going to continue the same amount of operations in that airspace, or is that number of operations going to increase because this is a better procedure or whatever? That's the kind of information that the public is all trying to find out, because that's, well, here, you know, there were, 10 flights before, and now there's 100. Well, nobody told us it was going to go from 10 to 100, kind of thing. So that's what I'm trying to understand is what is the expectation? What is what would we perceive as normal, for how this stuff goes? And that would be good information to understand when it's going through the review process. It's X operations today, what is it going to go ahead and be? The fact that, for example, if we didn't expect operations to increase, but here there's a big increase, does that mean that the procedure is a success or a failure? What is increasing operations how is that affecting the criteria of success? And this is one of those things you're seeing a number change, and I don't know if it's good or bad,
right,
of what goes on. So that's just information that would be easier for us lay people. Actually, I'm a policy people to understand, to be able to evaluate these things. So that would be helpful in the future.
So, Mr. Hendricks, on that, are you asking for what we think the increase is, or are you asking what we looked at as the increase? Or do you want both?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to be able to understand when somebody develops a procedure, what do we expect to occur? Either we expect, the same amount of usage, more usage, less usage, and then the actual of what, relative to that. Because again, if you expected to get double the usage on something, but you only got half the usage, you'd think that's a failure, right? If you expected the usage to remain the same, but here it doubled, and that meant something as it relates to people on the ground who are impacted by it, I'd consider that a failure. But I don't have that information, and that should be something that's, I would hope, is part of the criteria that's looked at for if you're changing to a new procedure, what is the expectation, and then what is the reality of that, and depending on, above or below, you could say, here, it's either doing what you wanted it to do or not. Does that make sense?
I can tell you, yeah, I totally understand now, and I can tell you it is looked at. I just don't know, I can't tell you what it is for PIRAT. I don't know that right now.
But the fact that somebody looks at it, okay, that's great. Is it publicly transparent to people so that we can understand? It's one thing to go, here, I looked at it. It's different than what I thought. Okay, that doesn't mean somebody looked at it
I'm
and
going to
said,
say no, it's not publicly transmitted.
And that's what I'm asking for,
Okay.
because that's part of the criteria of how do you determine that something is achieving the result you wanted to achieve. I'll just use an example. I'm on an oversight board for fast track lanes. Fast track lane usage is down. We consider that bad, right? We actually want it to be increasing. So we can make policy decisions to go, here, do we need to do something else to help get and achieve the result we were trying to achieve? If we've moved one parameter in a direction that we didn't want it to go, maybe that's okay, and maybe you don't do something, but at least you'd probably want to look at it to understand, here, are you really moving the levers behind the curtain correctly?
Understood.
Yes, Lydia. Is there anyone
Lydia?
else after Lydia? Yes.
May I ask one quick question? Sorry. Bert, do you have a sense of the change in operations at SFO over the last year or so? Has there been a steady increase in arrivals, and in particular, arrivals from the Asian countries?
Mainly the popularity of the Hawaii flights, Southwest starting operations. There's been quite an increase. The increase early on in the 17 era was Alaska Airlines, Virgin America prior to becoming Alaska Airlines, correction. And then we had a little bit of a drop as they started consolidating operations with Alaska, and then Southwest starting the market as well. Hawaii is a very, very popular market with the economy right now.
Thank you.
Does that have then any significance in how the FAA does look at the PIRAT procedure, knowing that there is an increase in flights?
It will moving forward.
Yes.
But we don't go back. Once we're done with that procedure and it's implemented, we don't go back other than the 60-day review to make sure everything's working properly and all that. We won't go back and look at, is there an increase and then change things. That will only be accounted for. So like when we do PIRAT 3, the increase will be accounted for when we go to do PIRAT 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I'll just say that makes sense, except it makes no freaking sense. Because it's okay for you guys to go back and change it because your air traffic controller has an issue. But why wouldn't you, but again, potentially you have people on the ground that are being impacted, but nobody's responding to them. So this is where I'd say to the congressional people, this is one of those legislative things to me that I think would be really important. To add this as a criteria, this, expected usage of a procedure to get into the the rules you tell FAA has to go by, to get them that they have to look at that and have some periodic review of that. Because you guys, if you have an internal problem, you guys are willing to go back and look at it. And that's proven by you're going to go take a look at PIRAT 3. You didn't, that's, but if just outside influence said, here, what about this? It's much harder and more difficult to get you guys to be responsive to those kind of challenges and problems. So I understand what you're saying. Clearly, I don't like the answer. I understand it. I just don't like it.
I totally understand. Got it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Lydia?
No, not at all. So firstly, I just want to say, in a way, I feel like you might be put at a disadvantage because some of the things that I'm referring to is from the packet and its responses to our committee by Ms. Gerwin. So, I really appreciate you coming to present, but I have to go back because there is some things in here that are a little bit contradicting based on what she answered, what Ms. Gerwin, in her responses back to the questions that we had submitted. So I'd go to page 10 of the packet. It's Ms. Gerwin's response letter to Chairperson Bernal. In it, it states that Ms. Bernal's letter also asks the FAA to validate assumptions made in its categorical exclusions of the proposed procedures amendment to ensure that noise and analysis conducted matches reality. However, your letter, Ms. Bernal's letter, does not identify any FAA assumptions that were unreasonable. So as I'm going through it, there are some that I have kind of identified. There are at least 7 assumptions that were unreasonable. And I'll mention a few, but then I will submit the rest to Chairperson Bernal to submit to you. And with this, the document that I'm using is actually FAA's PIRAT environmental review document that was dated May 17, 2018, which Palo Alto residents had requested through a FOIA, and it's actually posted in Palo Alto's city website. Unreasonable assumption number 1. In that FOIA document on page 17, it states, an increase in operations is not expected. And then page 30 in the packet, the FAA slide 18 shows that there is an increase. It is 35, when you calculate, it is an increase of 35.5% between 2018 and 2019, May through August flights from 4,668 to 5,479. And these are all nighttime flights. And we're supposed to be addressing this in this roundtable, nighttime flights. Assumption number 2, page 22, the FAA denotes the project as a community request. The PIRAT procedure was not requested by the community, and what was created is different than what was asked for. Assumption number 3, on page 50, the FAA states that the proposed changes do not capture any of the Select Committee / SF Roundtable recommendations. Rather, they're a result of design work to address safety and operational concerns. This contradicts what is stated on your slide that PIRAT is in response to the Select Committee recommendation. That would be FAA slide 16. And what you stated on the CADEX that PIRAT is a response to community requests. Going on to assumption number 4, the FAA marked yes to the question, are the airport proprietor and users providing general support for the proposed project? Our understanding is that SFO were shown and did not support the earlier version called PIRAT. So it would be great if we can get a response to the 4 unreasonable assumptions I have mentioned, and when I submit the rest. And if you can respond to it now, that would be great, but I feel that you're in an unfair position after all I'm going through Ms. Gerwin's responses.
So the PIRAT was built with safety and efficiency in mind while taking into account that we had the noise abatement procedure at Woodside VOR and the recommendations, I say again, recommendations of this select committee. So we designed based on safety and efficiency, and we were able to do that and meet those 2 requirements while doing that.
And
Does that answer that question?
And again, you have stated that it was at the request of the select committee, but I think it's very different what was requested and what has come about now, what was actually recommended.
Okay, if you want to just submit that to the chair, and then we'll get you an answer in writing for you.
I will. Also, you did mention when you were presenting about PIRAT, and it is the change from PIRAT 1 to PIRAT 2 with the altitude of 15,000 feet mean sea. Where is PIRAT itself?
PIRAT is out over the water.
Exactly. It's over the water.
Correct.
Right. So when it's flying, it comes in over land. It does go lower than the 15,000.
Correct, because they
I
cross ARG
understand.
at 8,000, so they got to go from.
That was what was proposed. And so, but after the VOR at ARG is what we're concerned about, and that is not part of the PIRAT request that the community had made. I want to make that very clear today.
Understood.
So, backing off what I said, the FAA presentation slide number 16 on page 28 of the packet, developed to meet noise abatement procedures. So if it's being developed for noise abatement, why is it that you're not meeting that noise abatement agreement documented in the 2000 letter with Representative Eshu for Menlo at 5,000 feet?
I am unaware of that. I couldn't answer that question right now, so I'd
So
have that
that's gonna
again,
be something
ask
that
you
we'll
to submit
submit.
that.
Thank you.
Lydia, if I may, we have scheduled public comment at 2:05, and I think if I'm looking correctly, it's 2:04 right now. Is it possible you can submit your other questions, and since we're not getting answers right now as to your questions for various reasons, that you submit the remaining questions, and we will then submit them to the FAA?
I am concerned. I have one more question, but I am very concerned because it is going to be resubmitted, amended into the gateway, which
Yes.
means that with the timeline between our next meeting and the responses to questions, I have great concerns that we're not
Please
going
go
to be
ahead.
fast enough.
Please go
Thank you. In Chairperson Bernal's letter dated January 17th, the FAA was asked about the history of PIRAT development. The slide of PIRAT development since 2013. So the slide 17 covers only the change from PIRAT 1 to PIRAT 2, not pre-PIRAT 1. So FAA records obtained through a FOIA request indicate there was a different PIRAT star mentioned in a January 2015 email that was part of the NorCal Metroplex project, but had environmental issues. So this FAA information is aligned with the San Francisco Noise Office, saying that they did not support a PIRAT procedure that was proposed around 2014 because of noise concerns. So we'd love to have all that data going back to 2013 when this is all started.
I spoke earlier to that. I don't have that. I don't have any way of verifying what was the final procedure, what wasn't the final procedure, what was submitted, what wasn't submitted, what was rejected. I don't have any way of determining the validity of those documents, and that's why I spoke to that earlier, saying I'm not going to be able to go back and reference things that were done in the Metroplex for NorCal. I can only go off of PIRAT 1 to PIRAT 2.
If it was previous to that, then how do you track, or how do you, I mean, if there isn't any, how do you use the data to analyze what the noise impacts are, what the negative impacts to the communities are, if you don't have the data? When you were talking to when you were responding to Mr. Hendricks, going forward, you would be collecting data. How would you not have data from 2000 up to 2013?
You're talking something totally different. So what I'm talking about with Mr. Hendricks was flight tracks. That doesn't have anything to do with the Pirate Star that was developed in Metroplex. Nobody ever flew it, never was implemented, so I don't have flight tracks to show what it was. So all I have is documents, and I don't know if those documents were the final copy. I don't know if it was a draft copy. I don't know if it passed all the stuff. I don't have any of that information to determine that. That's why we cannot provide that.
Okay, well, I'm going to submit it again because I'm wondering, from my experience of working on the different roundtables and ad hoc committees, it seems like there's one department that does design, another department that does environmental review, and another department does something else, and it doesn't seem like there is coordination or collaboration to understand what each department is doing. So I will resubmit it, and I want to know, because I cannot believe that you would not collect data on a new, on the new next gen that you have come forward with, in order to ensure that there isn't going to be negative impacts. So I will submit it because I know that you probably won't be able to answer this.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate the presentations
Thank you.
today. Do we have any further questions from the roundtable members? Yes, Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. Is Loop 5 going to come back at another time?
If we request it, we are not covering it today.
Yes, but it will come back at another time.
If it's requested, yes.
Okay, well, then I will request it.
You will request it.
Yes.
Good, good.
Because I was planning to address it, and when you made that comment, thought I missed something. So I
No.
would like to request that, please.
Very nice,
Yeah.
good.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Just procedurally, does she need a second for that request?
As long as there's no objection, I think it's a valid request.
Okay, good.
I'll second if you need it.
That's good, thank you. I have 10 requests to speak cards. Given the fact we are already 5 minutes over the time that was designated, we're down to 1 minute. We have 2 procedures. It's a tight agenda. I have to keep to the agenda. One of the reasons that we quit at 4, there's 2 reasons. We have our consultants who come from Sacramento, and they need to catch trains and go back. The second reason is that we are on a budget, which we will be discussing later on. And there's only so much time to deal with so many items, and that is what we have to respect. So please round up your ideas, give them to us. If you have more things that you would like to say, please write it to us, and I will make sure that it is submitted to the FAA. I think that's the most efficient way that we can use this. Steve, any further comments? Are we ready to roll?
Actually, Madam Chair, our time frame going back to Sacramento is not a hindrance. We could be here all day, but I also understand that the space is used sometimes after our meetings as well.
And that's the third thing, yes, as Kathy knows. Janet St. Peter. Palo Alto, airplane noise number 4. Okay. Jennifer Landesman.
So I believe that the CADEX is being misused to prejudge impacts. And Joe, all of my comments, by the way, and about FAA and so forth, you know, these are not personal when I get really mad. So when you say that something has not gone up to the 1.5 dB change for 65, that implies that something has gone up. My understanding of categorical exclusions, there are two definitions. One is if the federal government buys a lot of toilet paper, there's no impact. So they're just going to buy the toilet paper, and that action is a category that will not have any environmental review. FAA has chosen to create a CADEX, which has a level of environmental review that is really mysterious to everybody. But no matter what, that CADEX is an implication that there is, per the law, was that you reduce noise emissions. Oh my gosh, is it already over? Oh no, can I just show my posters?
Show your poster. And Darlene, if you'd prepare to speak.
I want to let Joe know, you're familiar with the 65 DNL, all of these planes, right? But that's 65. But all of the communities here, 65 is another world. We're here, 40, 45, and 55 is when our blood pressure goes up. Those are health implications. So we're talking about my monopoly set, and we're talking about metrics that have no value. We are talking with an empty currency when we're talking about 65 DNL and 1.5. So we've got a lot of problems, and I can't wait till we talk about details and stuff. But
Thank
we're
you,
just really,
Jennifer.
really in a virtual
Darlene.
world here now.
Thank you.
Slide 5 says you do not anticipate to fly, you anticipate to fly just as they are today in SUNNE. But if you look at Adam Vetter's slide, it's the turquoise that shows that it's not flying over the bay today. It's only partial flying over the bay. This is the issue we have. Also, if the procedure is defined by the bell, we all know, oh gosh, ATC's doing it, not the procedure. So that's the issue, is that the way it's defined, they have a tendency to go vector and do all kinds of things, and we have proof that a UPS flight came over on our side of the bay for SUNNE. So that's the issue. The number one issue, and I hope the congressional reps hear this, is that the 7 flights using Oakland down the bay means we cannot use San Francisco arrival flights down the bay. That's our solution to nighttime flights. So we're trading off 7 Oakland flights today for the possibility of solutions for nighttime flights over the bay. That's why this is majorly, majorly significant. My other point is, oh my God.
What we heard doesn't add up for me. I'm still puzzled why the FAA is going to the trouble of formalizing a procedure to minimize communications between ATC and pilots for 6 flights that occur between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. I don't get it. There are other procedures that are more heavily traveled that they're not doing this for. So you have to wonder what that's about. Second, and this is a fine point, the significance test that was quoted today does not match the relevant FAA order, which states that the 1.5 dB increase is significant if it causes an area to reach 65 decibels, meaning it applies to areas 63.5 decibels or higher. If the FAA agrees, I'd ask that the correction be noted on the slides and that they be reposted on the website. Finally, I have other comments that I'd like to state regarding the 1.5 decibel increase. I'll have to make them at the public comment period at the end. I hope I get more than a minute there, and I hope that the congressional reps will stay for that. Thank you.
Mark Scholl.
Yeah, the 40 years of the history of PIRAT are actually in the Roundtable's minutes. You can actually find them. PIRAT has, at DeVore, has been changed, the directions changed 4 times for a total of 60 degrees. The 4th time was the 98 time, and the reason it didn't go to 8,000 in 98 was because after 4 tests, the FAA determined it was noise shifting. The SFO Roundtable got another bite at the apple by going to the Select Committee years later, and the Select Committee approved it. And, of course, it changed the track by 20 full degrees. Well, how much is 20 degrees? Well, by the time you get to the bay, it's about the distance between Capitola and Santa Cruz, right? So this was a major track change. And if you go back to the FOIA data, when you actually did, the FAA did the design, the technical designers basically stuck with the historic ground track, but FAA management, in consultation, it looks like from the FOIA, with congressional representatives said, no, you must do the 8,000, and that's why we have the track going right through the middle of Santa Clara County It got moved, and we really need to know why.
Thank you. Barbara Rice.
This is an exercise in speaking quickly and clearly. Two things I want to say. I've been in this since the beginning of 3/5/15 when the planes were flying over my house at 2 in the morning. First of all, where is the overdue FAA quarterly update, and when will the BSR overlay finally be implemented from the recommendation from the
We're not
select
speaking
committee?
on BSR today. We're just speaking
I
on
know
pirate.
you aren't.
Okay.
I came a long way to do this. Increased number of flights. Thank you, folks, for bringing this up. When I look at that and I go, gosh, I'm getting flights over my house every 2 minutes. Very noisy. Why are we accepting an increase in flights, 1,000 or so, when I looked at your chart? For me, I'm going to be real honest, I see airlines making more money. That's why we have more flights. I think the efficiency that you're talking about, again, is more money for the airlines. It has nothing to do with reducing the noise that we're having to suffer through. Thank you.
Rich Everett. And again, I see jet effort after MR or MVCL 2015. We are speaking just at this time on Pirate and on SUNNE. Is Mark Everett here? No. Jennifer T.
Before I begin, can I have the slide of the SUNNE 1 flight track brought up? The track. You passed it. The track. There. Okay. Last year, during the SFO Technical Working Group, there was a presentation made. And during that presentation, there was a set of flight tracks that the FAA described as the current flight path. That flight path does not match this. That flight path was farther to the east and hit areas of Fremont and maybe even Hayward. So I'm wondering at the inconsistency here, since we're saying now that somehow that flight track didn't change. Again, I'm basing this on the FAA working group stating what the flight track was previously. The other question is, what is the intent here as far as why this is being altered? Is the intent to use this in the future for an RNAV path? And that could be an issue if this did indeed shift, and that this could be used for Los Angeles flights and things like that, and could heavily impact different areas if this was indeed shifted. So the question becomes why this was created in the first place for only 6 flights that would have typically been using this. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Porter.
First, I'd like to register my objection to being limited to just 1 minute. I feel that's inconsistent with Brown Act case law. So I'll talk quickly. With respect to PIRAT, as someone who lives near the epicenter of Waypoint Sidby, I find the rationale to be highly disingenuous. Relying on just one cherry-picked select committee recommendation to fix the Woodside ARG issue, and then it's a free-for-all. The procedure ends at Woodside at 8,000 feet, and then it's a free-for-all. That doesn't sound very safe to me, first of all, and it just means that there's much more opportunity for flights near where I live and my neighbors live. I think that the FAA could maybe pay closer attention to some of the other select committee recommendations and roundtable recommendations, which were to reduce the concentration of SFO arriving aircraft over and near Menlo Waypoint by assigning additional waypoints for some Surfer and Oceanic arrivals, and by rebalancing Bodego arrivals, increasing the minimum altitude to at least 5,000 feet, reducing vectoring, and so on. So again, very unhappy with PIRAT.
Thank you for your comments. Tammy Mulcahy.
I'll just quickly echo the comments on the DNL stuff because the fallacy of DNL, I'll leave it at that. I also wanted to comment on the letter that's been referred to so much from the regional administrator. And the thing that struck me the most was there was a comment in there in the final paragraph, which states the FAA is committed to addressing community concerns to improve safety and efficiency. There is no mention there of improving noise, and I just think that speaks volumes that that was stated in that letter. Finally, I just want to make a comment about PIRAT, and I'm happy for Woodside. They got their 8,000 part of the select committee thing, but that select committee thing was supposed to be part of a whole, group of issues. What happens after PIRAT? I mean, does it, like we've talked about before, when the FAA made PIRAT end at the VOR, what was their plan for after that and their noise impact after that?
Thank you, Tammy. I'm hearing certain items being repeated as concerns, and I would very much appreciate you submitting those. I think this is something that we'd absolutely have to take into account as we start talking about our priorities later on in our meeting today, because there are questions that we still have for the future, and learning that there's going to be a PIRAT 3, I think, may help us determine how we want to approach these. I think, too, what I am hearing is there still is some concern about RNAV and STAR and how they're implemented, so maybe we may need some training on that for our members as a whole. And I think, too, some information, because I've heard it several times, is increase in number of flights and how that's affecting things. So I ask you all who are concerned with these two matters to please submit more information to us. And for effectiveness, SCSC Roundtable, email, and to me as chair, because I don't necessarily always get them in a timely manner. So please do submit them. Thank you all. Thank you for the presentation. We will be sending some letters your way. And Bert, thank you. You will be getting some requests also. Thank you for your input. Okay, we are now at, we're only 10 minutes off. We are at item number 5, review, discuss Roundtable annual budget. Andy? By Bert, maybe so you could sit down if need be. Do you need any slides for us? It's in our packet.
Hello, I'm here to talk about the budget for the fiscal year 2021. And
Yourself?
Hi, I'm Andy Jordan. I'm the Executive Director of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. And congratulations, the Roundtable. This is the anniversary of the Roundtable. We've made it a year. And so, per the bylaws, I'm. Who would have thought, right, Karen? Per the bylaws, the Cities Association, in conjunction with working with the chair, is supposed to bring forward a budget amount to you 60 days prior to the adoption of a budget or the voting of a budget. So I am here today to suggest that we keep the dues and the budget amount at the same of $250,000 a year. And I have highlighted, and that doesn't account, and if you also notice, there is no discussion in here about other new members besides just our jurisdictions, the cities and the county. And as this group gels and moves forward, we thought it was important just to try to keep status quo for the budget as we gel and get our movement forward to try to get the other jurisdictions to join us. And I can go through some of the specifics if you want, but it's all in your packet. About where our money was spent, and then also there's a helpful table table about the meetings and what was discussed, roundtable agenda review calendar, so you can see where a lot of the activity happened.
Are there any questions for Andy regarding the budget? Glenn?
Yeah, so this is process perspective. Assuming we go ahead and vote and say we want to go ahead and do this, how soon or what's the last date that you need all of our councils to, don't we have to, I assume our councils are going to have to vote and say, yes, we're willing to pay this. So when do you need that done by?
Well, we would approve, the budget would be approved next month.
April.
I'm sorry, April, thank you, April. And because if a city does not agree to continue, that affects all of your budget amount. So we're in kind of, I can send back the table. I have a spreadsheet that our cities and counties were using to kind of tabulate what their dues would be.
I would say it this way. So assuming we vote to say we want to go ahead and do this and leave this the same, as part of that motion, I would hope that you, not us, you know, I don't want to have to go back. Could you help me go back to my city manager and say, here, I want to agendize this?
Yes.
So if you could send each of our cities saying here that we'd like to be able to try and get this agendized
And I will do
voted
that
on.
actually after whatever direction you give today for a budget amount. I will immediately go back to all of our jurisdictions saying this is agreed upon budget amount. It has not been approved yet. But the reason that we do that with 60 days is to allow
Right. But
the
I
conversation.
have a different problem of I probably don't approve my next year budget till June.
Right.
So we're going to need to kind of think through some of the mechanics of that in how you write that as letters to all of our city managers.
And also, a lot of your jurisdictions have already called me for a placeholder in their budget. So
Yeah, and-
Sunnyvale is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, we have a budget meeting tomorrow, but it's just, we're going to have to, I'm just assuming we're going to say yes to this.
If there's
and that's more
something
just
else that I need to
the
do for your
process.
jurisdiction process, I mean, what I normally do for the Cities Association and with this as well is to send a communication to the chief executive, and it will have the table in it as well for them to be able to change it, to see what how
So-
the dues would raise or lower.
Well, maybe we can have the public hearing part of this, but there's going to be some weirdness of just as this relates to all the sequencing of the cities then voting to go ahead and get it. Okay, got it.
Again, we were sort of in the same position when we started up, and so there had been a lot of communication, as Andy indicated, that you put it in as a placeholder, and there is no additional charge from past year.
Yeah, but for us, in the way it was in the budget cycle, so we did an amendment, a budget amendment for the remainder of the year, and then it went into the next, piece of what it is. This is just a little bit different, so.
The other part of this is that something I'd like to stress, and Andy didn't. When we communicated in the very beginning with all the cities and the counties, that we made it very clear that this was to be an ongoing venue, that this was not just a one-shot deal that would end in June of this year. So I would hope that that would be communicated. I think, too, it's important that we recognize that this is the only existing venue for our two counties, for the communities affected by next-gen changes, that we provide the effective communications with the FAA and Congress here, and past communications got lost. We had no direct way of filtering them to the right person. Maybe not lost, but slowed down. I think, given the fact that we've got priorities that we're going to be putting in place at the end of the meeting, we will understand that we have, this is the way that we as a body come together regionally to speak as a body with the force that we need to have for the FAA to recognize us and for our congressionals to understand that we are serious about what we're putting forward. So the bottom line, without a roundtable, you citizens and cities and counties have no venue to address your needs or concerns. And I hope that when you take this budget request back to your cities, or it is presented to you and you begin to discuss it, that you will keep that in mind. We have these community members who come every meeting, We have community members who write to us every meeting. And so beyond just us as council members, there is a reason for us to exist. It may be frustrating for you to have only 1 minute, but we are hearing you, and we are moving forward on it in the best way we can. Steve Preminger, and then Steve Scharf.
I just wanted to convey, I'm a member of the City Managers Association. Andy is not only a member, but a member held in high esteem, and that next meeting is within a couple of weeks. So I think we can probably get this on the agenda and not just have it be part of the Cities Association report to emphasize how important this is, because I think so far it sounds like we're all on the same page.
Steve Scharf.
So I had essentially the same issue as Glenn. It will be very difficult to convince my city to continue, although I will mention it to them. Okay. No, I mean, but yeah, how do you do a budget when you don't know if the cities are going to agree to continue? Was that what you? Okay, I'm sorry.
My point was here, if we went ahead and said to do this, all of the cities have to have additional steps in action to go through and get them agendized and vote and approve and say, go ahead and go forward, and that those will probably take place over multiple different timeframes.
I mean, do we want to get an idea of which cities here are willing to continue and which are not before we even adopt the budget? Or
And Madam Chair, just to be clear, we're not adopting the budget at this meeting. This is advisory to let everyone know what the potential budget amount is. And then 60 days from now, the roundtable will vote on the budget at that time.
Lisa.
Fine.
So I'd like to make a motion that we put on the Roundtable's April 2020 agenda consideration of the budget for fiscal year 2021 at the proposed level of $250,000 with the breakout that is shown in the staff report for today.
Second.
Anita was the second. Thank you very much. I will call the question unless there's any further discussion. Lydia.
So since the process has already gone forward, and, I support the motion, but before we do that, I noticed that on page 2 of the budget report that the meeting was at was budgeted for 6,958, but then it went up to the 21,000, over 21,000 for each meeting. And this is before we have subcommittee meetings, right? I get it that we're very enthusiastic, but when the subcommittees come on, that's going to be something that we have to be careful about. So moving into a second year as a roundtable, I think that it would actually be very beneficial to step back and think about how we can best use Steve's time and his technical skills. Not sure if facilitation is actually something that is necessary, but would love to have that discussion.
Would you like to frame that in the form of a question so Andy can answer that? Just put question mark behind and she'll answer.
How would you best use Steve's time as a more in the technical field rather than as a facilitator?
So we have been working on that. I have been meeting with various staff of various cities to see if we can come up with an alternative, maybe more of a hybrid staffing of this. And one of the things that we have been discussing is if we hire an admin person as a San Mateo County to do some of the meeting prep work, allowing, which would be at a cheaper rate, and would also then free up Steve's time. And as we move forward, I think that we're all really aware that we want Steve to do that, and so we are having discussions about trying to make sure that we use him more technical and less administrative.
Thank you. It's good to know that it's been considered. I mean, some of the questions that I asked today about SUNNE 1 and PIRAT, it's, I'd love for Steve to do it rather than for us to do. Thank you again.
Steve Preminger and then Steve Scharf. Oh, okay, Steve Preminger.
I liked the way Anita began her comments earlier in the meeting on a different topic, which was the need for this roundtable to continue. And along those lines, and sort of encompassing Steve Scharf's point, if there are any cities that are not interested in continuing or thinking about not continuing, I think it would be helpful to inform Andy informally, either if the council isn't thinking about it or the city manager, just so that can be taken into consideration in terms of her outreach.
I think it's also essential to keep in mind your own constituency when you begin to think whether you're going to continue or not, because I do know there are certain constituencies that actually brought into huge numbers at certain city council meetings with a demand for this type of a roundtable. They didn't know they were asking for the roundtable at that time, but they knew they were affected by the airplane noise. And I think that's something that certain cities should definitely be taking into account. Any other further questions for Andy? Then we have 2 speaker cards. I have Jennifer Landesman. We are speaking on the budget. And you get 2 minutes. And Darlene Yapley, 2 minutes.
Hi, I would like to suggest that you increase the budget to retain, maybe on a one-time basis initially, pretty soon, an attorney who can advise on what the CADEX is. Because the CADEX is a way, it's like whitewashing all of our impacts to make us into these little monopoly houses that don't really exist. And we're playing sort of a monopoly game here because nothing we do is going to have any effect on anything. So, and I feel like you would just be driving communities into a ditch without not knowing exactly what the laws are and how they're supposed to be applied. So I really would encourage you to increase the budget for that and for that to be the first order of business, because it is really serious that we're talking about noise mitigation, but then it turns into safety and efficiency. And for example, how to pose the question to FAA to stop publishing any procedures in the name of noise, to toll the statute of limitations on all of these actions until we have some sort of reasonable balance regarding the situation here. I mean, you guys aren't rushing to publish procedures for noise. Nobody is rushing you, and if somebody is, we should be aware of that. And then we could also do what is already law. In 2018, we changed the laws to have alternative metrics, to look at a different way of the way we suffer here. Because it might seem like 300 planes, let's say at 55 DNL, are not a big deal, but it has been described by people as a stab in the brain. It's very different, this effect of a 65 DNL and what you suffer with the frequency of planes. So until we can't keep working with monopoly money, which is the only, and DNL may not be so bad, but the World Health Organization has it at 55 for health effects. And you know what? Recently they said actually it could be 45. And that's where most of the communities are here. My house without noise is 40
Thank you for speaking
DNL.
to the budget. Next speaker.
Doesn't take a rocket scientist to know spending $21,000 a meeting is not going to work. If we're going to add 2 subcommittees, we're surely going to run out of money. So let's step back, reflect, and consider doing things differently. For 3.5 years or more, I've attended the San Francisco Roundtable meetings, and it's not about prioritizing alone. I think it's really important. It's about how you get the work done and what work gets done. The San Francisco Roundtable does not use the technical consultant to facilitate the meetings. The chairs, who are Roundtable members, do the facilitation at both the main meeting and the subcommittee meetings. For some of the meetings, the technical consultant calls into the meeting and does not attend the meeting. I know that this isn't the world's greatest solution, but we need to be pragmatic. We need to solve the problems and use time to hear from people on how to solve the problems and not cut off 1 minute to give feedback on procedures that are more important than me getting 2 minutes to talk about the budget. So I also think we have to stop doing some things. There is a lot of administration in this group. I mean, offline, I'm happy to tell you, if you look at what we do here versus what the San Francisco Roundtable does, there's a lot of admin stuff. They don't write up the minutes. You want to know who did the motion, who was at the meeting? You go look at the tape. And, again, it's a hassle, but the point is, where are we going to spend our money? Technical resources to solve the problems or figuring out who was at the meeting? these are tough choices, but anybody that has background in this, you know, maybe a group of you should get together because it is cut things, stop doing things. It's, you know, we have a tendency to want to prioritize a work plan, but we are spending all our money, if you look at the documents, in administration activities. We want to solve problems. We don't want to count how we're solving the problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, that's all right.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else before we move on to the next item? Steve?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's a motion and a second on the table.
I do know that.
So
I
we-
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, just need a vote.
We do have the motion on the table by Lisa and seconded by Anita. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then I take it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on now to, and thank you, Andy, for the report. Item number 6, discussion of work plan priorities. Yes.
Are we going to try to address the procedural issue at all in terms of finding out cities that might not participate that are going to impact that budget before we go back to our cities and deal with this?
If I might, what I heard Steve mention was to have those cities potentially advise Andy, so Andy knows who they might be, and then I would assume that Andy would provide feedback to the remaining cities. She's shaking her head yes.
Yeah, I want to make sure that she's going to get that information back out to us so that.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, because unfortunately, your individual costs will go up if cities leave.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're on item number 6, discussion of work plan priorities. First, I want to thank Anita for reviewing the work plan with the revisions that we made, Lydia providing an extra review. She picked up a couple things we missed, but the final work plan as approved by the Roundtable is on the Roundtable website. And now comes the sort of more challenging part of this, which we attempted, I think, twice earlier at previous meetings, is to put some priority on this. On the screen that you see up there are each of the work program items. And what we need from you is direction about what you would like to spend your time focusing on. And I realize that there are different communities, there are differing needs, but you as the Roundtable need to make decisions about where you want, in particular, if we're going to be doing more technical work, which we'd absolutely love to do, been dying to do, then you need to decide where you want to put your priorities. So our suggested approach, Evan has up on the screen there each of these items. You have a copy of this in your packet as well, and that is to go down in each of these sections and place priorities. I would recommend on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the most important as to what you want to spend your time focusing on. You may, in fact, have 2 priorities that are equal, and each of them have 9, and then some others have 7. We just want you as a Roundtable to think about where you would like to place your priorities and spend your time. So with that, I will open it up to the floor, Madam Chair, for discussion and recommendations and suggestions on this. And we can capture any suggestions that the Roundtable has as we move along with a numerical indicator.
Prior to that, I had a question, if I may, because in the work plan on page 72, there's a list of priorities. One being priority 1, respond to FAA proposals or actions. Priority 2, establish working committees. Priority 3, collaborate with others. Priority 4, take other administrative actions. And I'm looking to the chair or to your subcommittee members for any guidance on how this would or would not have any input or reflection on what we do today.
Yeah, in the course of our discussion, and Lydia can chime in as well as Lisa, what we felt was that assigning priorities based on looking at individual items that are here wouldn't necessarily make sense, because that wouldn't reflect the timelines that drive what we have to do when we have to do something that has a clock. And so I'd suggest maybe we modify Steve's approach, suggested approach with respect to these, by saying which of these are procedures that are open in some way, because our sense was that the priority ones needed to be the things right out of the gate right now that are procedures that are open or that we expect will pop momentarily. And therefore, those that'd be pretty easy to make those ones and then kind of go from there, I think.
Steve, does that have any impact on?
No, I mean, that's extremely helpful and excellent guidance.
Okay.
I would only recommend that, and it doesn't matter if we can go either other direction, but 10 being the ones that are the highest priority, and then ones being the lowest priority. So we'd expect to see some with 9s and 8s and that type of thing.
And with the understanding that we are a fluid body and need to respond as things come down the pike.
If we've done our generalized priorities with 1 as highest priority, I think we might get ourselves in trouble if we now start using 10 as the highest priority.
That works for me.
Okay, for the record then, Steve, how would you like to receive these numbers?
So 1 is the highest priority.
Okay.
10 is the lowest priority.
Okay. Are we sitting down and doing our homework now?
Yeah, what I would like is for the roundtable, and I think Anita had an excellent suggestion, that the procedures, since they're the #1 priority that the roundtable approved, perhaps those are all 9s or 8s or something along that line.
1s or 2s?
I mean, sorry.
Yes.
1s, and then so we would mark those 1s, get that group out of the way, and then move on to the other set that are maybe 2s or 3s or so on.
Okay, I saw a question from Steve Preminger. Did that answer it? Or?
No, I guess my concern is I'm hoping that we hear priorities that will keep us together as a roundtable. I'd hate to have things come up that give a reason for a city to say, it was nice knowing you. So I, coming from the county, which encompasses 15 or 14 cities, damn San Jose, am going to be listening for that, and I assume Carlos will be from Santa Cruz.
Lydia?
So I want to say thank you, Steve, for what you just said. You know, I look at this and I would really recommend to defer on the priorities, and actually, I mean, we'll save time if we just move to let the subcommittees meet first. If we work on the subcommittees first, put them together, they can work on the priorities, especially with the procedures, because the procedures, as Steve said, we want to have this roundtable be a community. We don't want to start picking on procedures and pitting one community against another, especially because noise affects every one of us. Yeah, it has no borders. And also the technical group will know what procedures needs to be looked at. I appreciate that it needs to be fluid and nimble, but it also needs to be flexible. And I would highly recommend that we defer that. It's kind of premature to vote on this when the subcommittees are not there yet.
I agree with you that subcommittees need to be formed and are essential working part of our group as a whole. However, I think that the subcommittees need to receive direction before they set themselves up as to what the priorities of the group as a whole are. So, Glenn, I know that you had wanted to speak.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused again, but that's just me. That this list, we can't do all of this. And so prioritization is important. And even just saying here, all the procedures are #1s, I don't think that helps us figure out what we want to do first. Even if we want to work on all the procedures, we can't work on all of them at once. So, you know, what I actually did coming into this, before this meeting, I ranked them all. You know, assuming taking, you know, everything is just equal in the way you would go at it. Here, how would I go ahead and what would I prioritize? Now, once you got all that information from us, here, if something happens or we have a time frame, then you'd adjust. But at least if we did that and everybody force ranked and we came up to some agreement of what that was, then you could kind of look at it and go, okay, we have time to work on, X amount of time to work on procedures. Whichever the 1, 2, or 3 top procedure ones, those are the ones we would work on. And we wouldn't be arguing about whether or not we're working on the 7th one. So to me, this is what I thought we were doing 3 times the last couple meetings, and we never seem to do, is for us to input and go here based on our own perspective, our constituents, what we feel the needs are, is here's my perspective of what I think is important. If everybody gave that in, you could do some math somehow and come up with a list. I'd be okay with whatever it is. And then that would help guide, not dictate, but guide how we want to go ahead and use limited resource hours of getting us together. Or that when we do get together, that we're going to work at things that are towards the top of the list, not at things that are towards the bottom of the list. And that's what I thought we were trying to do. I'll do whatever you guys want, but you're saying you're 1 through 10. I got 1 through X. And I'm ready to turn that in whenever you want or tell me what to do, but I'm confused.
And Glenn, that's a perfect point. We tried the 1 through X approach twice now. It did not provide, at least before we finalized the work plan, it didn't provide the guidance that I think you all need. I'm happy, at the desire of the roundtable to take that approach again. My hope of doing it today, rather than saying bring this home and fill it out and send it back to us, is that you can all agree on what it is that you want to focus on. Because we can take input, take it back home, do that averaging, and then we wind up with, 2 or 3 items that are sort of tied for first place, and then you need to make another decision on that. So I'm happy doing it whatever way you want, as long as hopefully within the next few minutes.
But just to that point, I don't think if we had 2 items that came out as number 1, that'd be okay, because that's the sense of here, those are really important. It's again, I think the prioritization is to guide what we're doing. This would not be a dictate, because there are other factors that are going. We just can't seem to get the parameter in that says, here, what is, as a group, we think is the most important stuff to go work on. But I'll do whatever you want.
Having been the chair and having received the input, I think I got 5 out of 13 people that gave me any information, and we can't work on that. That's not a regional representation. For me, it's a little confusing, because when I look at the technical working group and the legislative, both of those ad hocs, standing committees, I rank them as first, both. But that doesn't give me the amount of time that we would be giving over to that. And then underneath that, as a subset, I would look at, for instance, because of today and PIRAT and SUNNE, that perhaps that bubbles up. There are other ones that I know have come in from Carlos that have to do with flights that would affect Santa Cruz. And so for that reason, we've got Palo Alto, we've got Santa Cruz, we've got Mountain View, we've got Santa Clara, we've got Sunnyvale. I think we can, if you can think of a way, Steve, that we can indicate that we have our own personal preferences, and that also we as a whole should be working together on some items, that would, I think, be beneficial, I hope.
Yeah. Yes, Madam Chair, and part of what we were thinking is we would break these up essentially into sections, so that the section 2.0 would be its own ranking area. The roundtable members would provide priorities in that area, as you would do with 3 as well. And we were focusing on 1. So each section would have its own set of priorities and not, necessarily outrank the other. Glenn, did you rate all of them at once, or did you do them by section?
I did them all at once, but if you looked in a particular group, if there was a 2, 7, and a 9, you'd understand that's 1, 2, 3 within that group. Mm-hmm. I can. You tell me how you want to do it. I'll give you the number any way you want.
Does it help if we put the number for for the sections 1, 2, and 3, and first prioritize those as 1, 2, or 3, depending on what we care about.
Did.
I know
Yeah,
that's what you did.
That's done.
And see if, but then within that subgroup, if we then put down what our 1s, 2s, and 3s are. Am I making myself clear? Anita, from your face, it doesn't look like I am.
Well, I think the elephant in the room, maybe we already have acknowledged this, is that we've got a whole bunch of procedures that are hot buttons, and depending on where we live, some are hotter for us than others, but we all acknowledge that all the procedure issues are the hottest buttons. So I think the question is, how do we prioritize, I didn't count them, but there's at least 10, I think, different procedure issues of some sort here. And the only way I can think to prioritize those is based on the timeframe criticality of what the FAA is doing. Because if we were to prioritize and agree that SUNNE 1 is the, and I'm just going to speak hypothetically, okay, you guys, this is not anything at all. SUNNE 1 is the most important because if the FAA keeps to that, it precludes solving another problem, and that we think that's the most important thing, but they're not willing to look at that for the next 9 months, then it would be stupid of us to put that as priority 1, in my mind. So I kind of look at Steve and say, you, plus the folks sitting over there at the table, have a much better sense of when these things are going to come up for us to possibly do something. So I see them rank, the procedural things, not ranking in terms of priority, because I don't think that's what we ought to do, but rather a sequence of when they're likely to get handled next or get touched, need to get touched by us. And to me, that makes much more sense than trying to put one procedure as a priority over another procedure. That's just me.
Thank you, Anita. And I think we know part of the answer to some of these items, taking SUNNE 1, for example, there's the aspect of once the procedure is published, you have essentially 60 days if any member or member of the public would want to take action and file a petition against that procedure. So that's something that we know. There are other things, as Joseph mentioned, like the new PIRAT 3. We only know about that when it shows up, and then we have the opportunity to work on it. I also, sort of as on the technical side of things, I would like to think that there are several of these things that we could be working on so that when the roundtable's ready to say, okay, we need to pull the trigger on this, we've got the information that you need and we're ready to go on it. So it's a little bit open and flexible on exactly what those dates would be, and I think some of them will come up like that.
And that's exactly why I think it makes more sense for you to basically say, knowing us, this is how I think these are going to fall out. This is the work I think needs to happen in what order on each of these items. And to me, that makes much more sense than us trying to figure this out.
So am I registering what you're saying correctly when I look at section number 1 and all the things underneath it, that we need to maintain our nimbleness and fluidity on all of those, dependent on what is occurring with the FAA procedures?
Yes, with the addition of Steve's knowledge and expertise of where each of these are currently, and his notion of probably what kind of work needs to happen on different ones of these in order to be able to be nimble and respond when it's time.
So Steve, does that mean pretty much everything under 1.0 for you? And then we go from there? Oh, well, I'm going to look for other input too, please. I didn't realize I have all of Santa Cruz County over on this side, and you're hard to see. So if Steve would answer, and then I'll look down here. Is that?
Carlos is ready to go.
Yeah,
No, I was just going to say I agree with Anita's statement completely. I think that's the best way to handle the procedures, because we're obviously from this end of the table, there's really one procedure that impacts us, and how do we rank all the other procedures, and it just doesn't seem right. But there's going to be sequence, there's going to be timing, and it seems like we attack them as they become pertinent.
Okay. Lisa. Whoops.
Yeah, so I agree that the procedures as a group I agree with the recommendation, but if you look at everything under number 1, not all of those are procedures. So when we say advance the recommendations by the select committee and advance the recommendations by the ad hoc, some of those were not procedure related.
So how would you like to handle that?
So I would say those are handled by the roundtable overall, whereas I think procedures are handled by the technical working group with guidance from Steve. And I would say number 2 is handled by the legislative group to set the priorities for what they want to do there. I feel like it's too hard to do all the priorities here as a group. I would leave it up to the technical working groups or technical working group and the legislative group.
So then, how do we define what the technical working group is going to be doing? How do we give assignments to them?
So I think we just recommended what we do with the procedures, that we know what the list is, and we look to Steve to provide guidance on the timing of them. And that's, I think, what the technical work group starts on.
Thank you for the clarity. Anything more from Santa Cruz County? Your microphone, please, Cynthia.
This one did turn green. Limited focus for us. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. Right. Glenn, and then Steve, the Prime Chair.
So I appreciate what Anita's saying about the timing of stuff. I actually hate the fact that the FAA is going to dictate what the sequence of how we're going to operate and stuff. But my real concern, and this follows along with what Lisa was saying, is if that's the case, I don't think we ever get to talk about South Flow, because there's nothing currently, there's no procedure coming for them that we're going to have to respond to. What we want is we want to give them a procedure that says, here, respond to this and fix it for us. So I appreciate the timing of all this, but, I appreciate Santa Cruz's constituency and limited perspective and stuff. I have a perspective, which is I'm trying to get something done about South Flow. And I've been attending this meeting for close to a year, and we don't ever get to talk about South Flow. So again, this is where I think, however you want to do it, that tell me which things you want me to prioritize, and I will do it. And I think if we all provided that information, that would get this essence of stuff in, and we could have the discussion of, here, what do we think we come to that group prioritization? And if that meant, I'll just say this, that my South Flow stuff's got to go to the very bottom, then what I'm going to do is to say, then let's make sure all that other stuff happens really fast so I can get to my part of the list.
Right, and I
Right.
follow you. So what in response to that, because again, I recognize each city has its own issues and concerns, legitimate. So please, on yours, Glenn, on yours, Santa Cruz, put in the items, rank them number 1, please. And then if Mountain View, you have certain things, please rank them as number 1, in addition to what we've already said in terms of procedures. Los Altos Hills, you have a set of issues. Saratoga has a set of issues. So within that, we should be voting on our own, but we are now recognizing that as the things come through with the FAA, Steve will have the ability to respond, not react, respond. And someone else had a question. Prime Chair, yes.
I didn't have a question. Glenn, I don't hear Anita's suggestion as saying we're going to do what the FAA is hoping for or whatever. I think that's where Steve comes in, and I'm assuming Steve is going to, in part, know what the next step should be timeline-wise, but also channel what I think are sort of consensus comments that are coming out of the group. I don't represent a city. I don't have a specific concern about a flow or whatever, something going one way or the other per se. I just want to see what's going to move the whole body forward so that we can get somewhere in the next 12 months.
So if I can just respond to that, Mike, what I heard Anita said is here, that because of the timing and sequence of what the FAA does, if they've got, here, if they're talking about SUNNE or PIRAT 3 or PIRAT 7 or whatever it is, because of their timeline and our needs to respond, they're going to cause certain things to always bubble up to the top of the list with our limited set of resources because we have to get it done, turn in our homework because they've said it's due. That's what I mean by they're dictating the agenda. And maybe that's fine of what we have to do. It just means it's very hard to get the things that the other stuff that's on the list dealt with. Because again, this is not prioritization like here where it's going to make it 1 through N and we're going to be able to do it all. It's going to be 1 through whatever, and we're not going to be able to do everything. That's my issue. And I'll play the game however we come out to. We should just come up with, let's get to that list because this is what we've had difficulty getting to. Again, if my stuff's at the bottom, that's where the group consensus comes out. But let's understand what it is so we all know how we're operating.
And I guess I would respond back by asking if Andy took a selfie, if we could all see that. But my second point is, Steve, I wonder if you have a satisfactory response to what Glenn said. Maybe you're hearing something that would be helpful to have you articulate.
Well, you will all be the judges of whether my response is satisfactory or not. But my idea, based on what I've heard, and we're at the end of the time for this particular item, is let's take another shot at having you fill these forms out, provide that information back to us between now and the next meeting. We will apply the background that Anita's asking us to apply to it, and then bring forward to you at the April meeting where things wound up with our input into it in terms of the timing of some of these items. Because, I mean, like I said at the beginning, my desire would be right here and right now, everyone in the roundtable makes this priority, but it sounds as though it's too difficult to do in this forum. Glenn's shaking his head no. So send us your input, just a recommendation, and then we will make the, put all the data together, tell you where it came out at the next meeting, and tell you where we think the stressors are in terms of timing on these items. Is that a yes or no, Glenn?
The only thing I would say is, please tell us that if you're gonna ask us to turn homework in, when do we have to turn it in by? Tell us the date. Give us a hard date.
I would love it by this Friday.
We still do need to work on this, to approve that we're going to be doing this and get public comment.
Correct. And Lydia, did you have any input? I saw you when I was describing that approach, you were like, I don't know.
Sorry, I'm sorry for the feature, for the facial tics. No, I don't have any comment. I said it at the beginning.
Okay.
You know, I was just kind of giving my input.
Okay.
I had a comment or input.
Yes, Clara.
So one of the issues with the timing issue, and Glenn, this is pertaining to your comment, we're all going to rank Big Sur Surfer Star as our #1 priority, obviously, right?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, right. But the issue is that there's nothing to work on. That's our #1 priority, but there's nothing for us to work on until we see what they're going to do. And then we're not going to see what they're going to do until they come to the next meeting and declare what the process is, and then we can start working on it. But we're going to say that's #1, but there's nothing for us to do on it. That's why I think what Anita's saying makes a lot of sense, that we're dependent on them, like it or not, in terms of they're going to dictate the timing, because there's nothing to work on with Big Sur Surfer Star until they declare the next step. So we're going to declare it #1, but yet there's nothing to work on until
And
later.
I appreciate and understand that. That's why I said it guides what it is.
Right.
The problem for me is, on my side, there's something we could ask him to do to give to the FAA, but we'll never be allowed to do that because it's not over on the FAA side.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If once we get this in, it's a guidance and directs, and then, based on what's going on with the FAA, and if there's certain timing that comes up, if we have only 30 days to respond to something, obviously, we need to go ahead and deal with that. But it's how we go ahead and manage everything else around that. It's parameters that go into the Mark 1, his Mark 1 brain that helps process all this stuff.
Okay,
I
because the other difficulty is that we have, for us, there's really two of these that impact Santa Cruz County. And so, you know, we'll rank 1 and 2, but I have no idea how to rank the other ones, right? They are all important to other communities. So that's why I think it's sort of a false choice to try and rank the number ones. And I think it's really going to rely on the expertise of Steve to give us more guidance. We can certainly rank the number 2s and number 3s, and that's more of a policy issue. The other ones really, you know, what are we going to do in terms of, you know, ranking the other ones? We don't know.
If I may respond to that, we've heard the procedure presentations on SUNNE and PIRAT. If you rank those higher, that will give us more motivation to have something in return in April, and or understand that we want to have more information given to us. If you've heard something today that says to you, you really want to discuss this at the next meeting, I would like to see that generated too. So there's something more than just BSR. And in terms of BSR, why I blurted out what I did was perhaps not something I should have, but the FAA is working on that, and at their own pace. It may not be at the pace that we would like to see it happen, but they're working on it. And at this point, for a very strange reason, I guess, I'm saying I don't see that that should be a number 1. It's something we want to see happen and see happen fast. But in terms of ranking it so that we can work on it, I don't know where we can go any further than when we hear from them that they are ready, which gets us back into that loop for when they're ready and gets it back to Steve understanding when or knowing and the FAA is telling us that there is going to be a next step. So let's do our homework while we're taking public comment. I think there's certainly reasons for and against different things, but I really would like to hear from the community what their concerns are too, so that we, as we're working on these sheets, that we understand what we would like to, what our mission is going forward. And with that, I have 2 cards. I'll give you 2 minutes, Darlene Yapley and Rob Holbrook, and if anyone else would like to speak, I'd love to hear from you too. And Jennifer, yes, but I'll get you next, yes.
The San Francisco Roundtable does not rank procedures. They do not pit one procedure over another. And it's divisive and it's too blunt. I mean, when we look at the votes people did, it's like, oh my God. You know, and I appreciate Carlos's honesty. They know their area and they can advocate for that. But then what do they do with the rest of you? So what Anita said is true. Procedures are the most important thing. We're being too black and white. If you look at the list, Big Sur, okay, we're waiting for the FAA. We don't need to prioritize it right now. We need to wait till the FAA comes back. PIRAT, SUNNE, and Loop, we need to regroup and say what questions can be asked to the FAA. Right now, there's no other competition for questions to the FAA, so why do we need to prioritize? Southflow, we need to get the technical working group or a subgroup to sit down and figure out how to advance that, and if Steve's time is needed to go explore some technical options. The nighttime flights need to be explored as a group. How are they impacted? What can be done? We are bluntly prioritizing when it's kind of a bundle. What can be done? How can it be done? Who needs to do it? What are the dependencies? Stack ranking that, you're creating a problem that you don't want to have, because we're all going to look at that list and they're all going to say, great, we're 5th, we're 6th. How are we going to solve these problems? Why should we vote? Why should we come to the meeting? Why should our council support this? How is anybody going to feel somebody's going to be 10th on that procedure list? I don't think that that's a regional approach, and I think Steve Preminger mentioned that. I just don't think we're not at that point. If we were saying, are we going to pay to have a study on Big Sur versus study on PIRAT, let's have that conversation, but we don't need to have this difficult conversation for this first level of where we are.
Thank you, Robert.
I've done a lot of work on prioritizing things in business in my career, and I see a potential for this just to go bad. I'm uncomfortable with this, with the potential for this. First, let's start by respecting the fact that each member is going to have different priorities and different areas of focus. I think we all get that. Second, I expect that most of the progress that this roundtable is going to make is going to come out of the subcommittees. And there, the progress is going to be gated by people volunteering time and energy for those subcommittees. And we're having this discussion without any polling of who's willing to work on what. The assumption that there's a fixed amount of resources that we get to divvy up is not accurate. People are going to work on things that they care about, and they're not going to put a lot of time into things that they don't care about. So that's a variable. When it comes down to prioritization, one of the first things you learn, and you guys have talked about, is that there's urgency and importance. And I would add this third thing that I just mentioned, which is the amount of available resources that you have. And so when we talk about priorities, we need to be thinking about who's going to be working on it, who's going to serve on subcommittees, how urgent is it, how important is it, and this gets to be and then there are common resources like plenary session time and budget, and then there are resources of people contributing to some work product. This is a management challenge, and I think one of the big contributions that our roundtable management can make to this body will be to be effectively and deftly balancing all of these aspects of the priorities, including the desire to maximize member engagement. With respect to specific priorities, I had hoped to see with Mr. Hendricks more progress on South Flow by now. I expect that'll be coming out of the, now that we're going to get some technical committees. I would add the importance of legislation and regulations. The playing field for resolving noise issues is tilted against the home team, you might say, and it's critical that the FAA operate under revised rules that provide a more level playing field. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Landesman.
So if nothing gets done with SUNNE, the most important thing heard today is that Joe said there's no going back. And what that means is that there are no options for one of the largest constituencies of the Select Committee to find solutions for nighttime noise to use the bay and for other solutions. So today you have already failed us because you're not meeting until 60 days from now. SUNNE is going to happen, and the answers from the FAA, who knows when they're going to come. So we're already screwed, I'm sorry, regarding that. And how that has not been clear to any of you is a really big concern. After all of the input that we've provided from the very beginning of this committee, throughout the Select Committee, if I were you, I would beg and ask the FAA to hold off on that decision because it's a noise decision, even. Not that, for efficiency, they wouldn't have to let us know what to do, but that anything that has to do with noise should be put off so that everything is looked at together in a holistic manner. All of these procedures are interrelated, interdependent, and they can be looked at together. Instead, this is death by 1,000 cuts. And I really mean death, because when you put impacts at night, it's early death. And so I don't see how anybody just doesn't have alarm bells, going on right now. So this is a litmus test, and you're failing completely. How can we trust you for anything else?
Thank you, Jennifer. Greg Hiver.
Good afternoon. I actually came with a prepared speech, and then I wrote all these notes, and everything's changed now. So my priority one is pretty simple. It's get the damn planes from coming over my house every night, which is the surfer flight path. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I live in a canyon up in the Soquel Hills, and it's so frustrating. And I almost thank God that the FAA is kind of working by itself to look at the Big Sur overlay and perhaps move it back over there without interference or other discussions tying it down. That's really important to me. And by the way, it would be nice if the FAA could kind of give us a timeline of when that might actually take place. I understand studies and things like that. I heard from, my limited knowledge of all of this that BSR is pretty good. And there weren't safety issues affecting it, and that the transition shouldn't be all that long. So, for this to take 2 years, I would be shocked. For it to take 1 year even, And why can't they move it much more rapidly than that? I would definitely focus on noise decisions with high priority, contrary to what that previous speaker said, that you guys exist because of a noise problem in our neighborhoods. You came into existence because people like me came and complained that they couldn't stand what was going on over their homes. You've really changed the dynamic of our lifestyles. You know, I've lived in Soquel Hills for 20 years. I want to move. I want to get out. Lastly, any city who is considering leaving, do so at your own risk, because if those planes start flying over your own constituents' heads, good luck with the public, because they'll go after you.
Thank you, Greg. Is there anyone else? Yes, come forward, please. Please, no, we are not discussing BSR Surfer. It's just, he was talking in terms of the work plan. We will be, there will be an opportunity for you to respond. Okay, if you don't, yes, you certainly, if you give us our name.
I would just like to, what this gentleman just said about prioritization, he's a product manager. If you've had 3 meetings to try to figure out how to set relative priorities, what has to happen for this to work as a body is you have to organize it and be able to present it in a framework where people can actually provide their input. There's a broken part of the community process when we're not managing this roundtable to provide adequate input on the agenda items that matter if you're limiting it to 1 minute and 1 minute breaks. And so what I'd like to see out of this body would be a little bit of leadership. I've gone to a couple meetings, I don't see that. And I see one basic thing, like Glenn's comments about we can be in a mode where we're constantly reactive and we kind of have to, but if we can take an issue or two and get some consensus about something that we would like to proactively request a change, like the nighttime flights initiative, or South Flow, whatever it may be, you may get a different working relationship with the FAA, where they're actually serving what their representatives are trying to represent. And so that would just be my input to the process.
Would you care to give us your first name, just for the record? Sorry, Ross?
I'm Ross Mayfield, a resident of Palo Alto.
Ross. Great, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Yes. Is it?
It's Mark Schull from Palo Alto.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I haven't attended these meetings very much, but I have attended the San Francisco Roundtable meetings for many years, including the working group meetings. And generally, and I'm also working on a history of, because there's a great archive there of what's really happened and what's worked, what's not worked, and it's pretty clear. It's all about the subcommittees, and essentially they are volunteer subcommittees. So people who are volunteer for them care about those issues, and over time they move. There's a list of 4 or 5 things they might be focused on, but that kind of migrates depending on what is topical, what's urgent, what they want to get done, and what the FAA might be doing. And I would just say that one of the biggest ways of just getting going and getting some programs and proposals to moving forward, I would say, is just get the subcommittees going and let them figure out what the most important things to work on are, and at least I've observed it seems to work pretty well there anyway. Thanks.
Thank you for your input. Finally, anyone else? Okay. Where are we, group, in terms of being able to hand in our homework? Are we ready to pass things forward? Are we going to commit to anything?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, we're happy to take the input by Friday. Folks can either fill out their forms electronically and send them to the SCSC at roundtable@gmail.com site, and then we will compile it and put our signature on it in terms of top priorities and issues that are more timely or more of an issue than the other. One point I do want to respond to, just to make sure that it's clear, that while the subcommittees can work on particular items, it is the items that are assigned by the roundtable to those subcommittees to work on them. So this group has to come forward with, here's certain things we'd like the subcommittees to do. go do it. It's not that the subcommittees will go figure out what it is that you all want to do and come back to you.
Exactly. That's a pretty good segue into the next item, which is appointment of the subcommittee members. I am hoping, I have only received one request to serve on a subcommittee at this point. I am going to move on to item number 8 then, with everyone's approval. Where we were looking at technical, procedural as one, and number 2 as legislative. They are subcommittees, and I think it's important for us to consider the fact that subcommittees are Brown Acted. That means that they have to be noticed, they have to be posted, Steve has to be involved on some level, minutes have to be taken and recorded, and that these subcommittees cannot be meeting by phone, especially if we don't have a majority out within a jurisdiction. Is there anything else that, with the subcommittees, that we need to understand?
We can do subcommittees by phone. Hopefully there's a quorum of the members of the subcommittee at a particular location, because under the Brown Act, we have to make that location available to the people who are participating on the phone. So not only where the people are meeting, but the other locations, particularly if those subcommittee members are going to vote on anything.
And of course, that location has to be posted publicly,
That
and
is
the door
correct.
has to be open.
Correct.
Yes. So I hope we're not taking the cart before the horse, because part of what we were supposed to be voting on was where the priority was on the subcommittees. So I would like to hear some, Steve, if you have anything more to say, or if there is discussion on the members' part in terms of their feelings about those 2 subcommittees.
The only thing I would add, Madam Chair, is that this is your action, so you actually appoint the subcommittee members. It isn't necessarily a roundtable action. Obviously, you want to hear who wants to be on these subcommittees, and we generally understand that there will be a technical working group and a legislative working group, and I think those names explain what each of those groups will be doing.
What we had talked about in the past was having self-submissions given to the chair to make sure that it was not just that it was a representational body. In other words, I'm not really meaning to pick on you, Santa Cruz County, but you don't get to be the 3 that are on the subcommittee for technical procedures, okay? I mean, we really do have to keep in mind that this is something that should represent our body as a whole. And so I'm looking to you, Steve, in terms of, we did put out a request, and it was noticed here that people should self-submit. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa is our legislative representative. Whoop! Lisa is our committee right now. That's about all I know. So I am going to ask that by Friday that you submit the names, please, and we'll set up the standard from there. Is that acceptable to the group?
Yeah, there could also be nominations from the floor as well if people are so inclined.
Okay, good.
May I ask a question?
Please.
So with the subcommittees, San Francisco Roundtable has citizens join in who are not members of the Roundtable, and they provide a lot of great information as well as guidance, providing data and so forth. I hope that we're open to that.
By our bylaws, we are not. That certainly doesn't mean that you as a representative couldn't be receiving information from the community.
Are they, they're allowed to attend the meeting as the community and have public comments as well? So it's treated the same way?
Yes.
I just want to be very clear.
Yes, yes, yes. But
And it's going to be, and what you foresee is it's going to be just as formal as this?
it pretty much needs to
Yes, it would be as formal as this, a smaller group of folks.
Steve Preminger, did I see you move forward or not? Was that?
Well, no, but I was thinking, is this a good time to nominate Ed?
Since he's out of the room. To which committee? To one of the technical working groups?
So I had a chance to speak with him about potential for vice chair, but I haven't had a chance to speak with him about his interest in either committees, and so I wouldn't feel it would be appropriate for me to put his name forward for something without speaking to him about it first.
It looks like we're thinking hard here. Anyone going to self-submit? Yes. Okay, Anita, yes.
I apologize. I somehow missed the memo. So I'll volunteer if anybody wants me on the technical committee. It probably makes more sense that I be there than in legislative.
Anybody else?
And I'll go ahead and go. I missed the same memo she missed because I didn't see that. I'd actually, I don't know if there's, you don't want people on both, but I'd put my name for both, but my priority would be legislative and then technical.
Anita, you said tech, and Lisa is ledge. And where are we putting Ed? To be determined. Okay.
So may I,
yes.
I'd like to submit my name for both.
For both.
And I just wanted to say, if they're full and stuff, that's why I gave you my priority of which one I'd do first.
Lydia, do you have a priority?
No. Technical.
Technical? Okay. Kathy?
I'd like to self-nominate for the legislative, please.
Great. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Come on, Carlos.
Ed is doing all the Santa Cruz County work.
Speaking for Ed, do you think he has a preference? Maybe technical? Maybe technical for Ed, if he has a preference? Okay, okay, all right, all right. Comments from the public? We are on, if there's nothing in discussion, we are on item number 8. Nope, 7. I don't have any comments, but are the cards, Darlene?
I want to make a comment about the San Francisco Roundtable. For the subcommittees, they make the subcommittees open to members that are not on the subcommittee. So obviously, if they're talking about a procedure that affects you, or all of a sudden a procedure comes out of nowhere that affects you, and you're not a member of the technical working group, the member then can join and participate actively. I think that's really important because there's so much variety here.
And I agree with you. I'd like to see that we get some people working together to provide the groundwork and then open it up to whatever is happening. So more self-submissions, more involvement. Yes, Jennifer.
So I thought that one of the most important things that you would do is coordinate with the San Francisco Roundtable, Oakland Forum, and so forth. And I just wondered, actually, when the technical subcommittee happened with the SFO Roundtable, it was after they rejected Palo Alto's membership, and so they created that as a forum for Palo Alto residents to attend. And I think it's really great to do outreach to the broader Bay Area community so that anyone that is in other places can come and find that as a place to discuss issues. And, but I just wondered, and I'd like to know at some point, where is coordination going to happen? Will it happen in the technical subcommittee? Lastly, for the legislative subcommittee, the SFO Roundtable has a legislative subcommittee as well. And for that, having worked a lot with colleagues around the country on legislative issues, I don't think you need to have this done in 4 different places that are within the same, within half an hour of each other. It would be great if all of those committees could kind of work together. So I would look for some cooperation with everybody else. Because how SUNNE happened is because Oakland asked for something that we had no idea about, and here we are, completely late to providing a response, and the report that has been provided on the IFP Gateway just had no information. So I think that is really important, is that all the community engagement piece completely failed because the community is not being given an opportunity to say anything before it was published. And the information has only been after it was published. Thank you.
And in speaking to that, Lydia, Ed, and I are on an ad hoc with 3 members of the San Francisco Roundtable in coordinating our efforts. So that is occurring. It's not set up. Oakland has hesitated because they have a different type of setup with non-electeds to come around to be meeting with us, but Lydia attends the SFO meetings, and I am in contact with the past chair and the current vice chair on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the vice chair, who's now Ann Wengert, is out of the country or out of the area at this point, so she wasn't able to come here today, but in the past we have had representatives attending our meeting and Lydia attending SFO. Any other, yes, Jennifer?
Sorry, just wanted to mention, I've attended a couple of the SFO working group sessions, and I found those to be valuable. Typically, they'll have, a chair who's a member of the round table, and then the FAA often does attend those as well because they can become highly technical. Members of the public generally are there, but are giving comments and a little bit of input. They have no voting ability in there, but it did seem to work pretty well. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you very much. So we are set up. I have Lisa for Ledge, Anita for Tech, Glenn for both with Ledge first, Lydia for both with Tech first, Kathy for Ledge, Ed for both, probably Tech first. Anybody else? Michelle. Okay. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You, as the chair of the roundtable, get to appoint the chair of each of these subcommittees, and then once the subcommittee meets, it selects its vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Because Ed's not here? No, we are not doing that. Okay. That's been done enough. So, I can also ask if somebody, yes, as I'm dividing this out, anyone want to self-nominate for chair of Ledge? Kathy?
And I'm here.
You are here.
I'd like to nominate you, Lisa. I'd be happy to.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Lisa. And now for Tech, I have Anita, I have Lydia with preferably Tech, and I have Ed with Tech. Any nominations from?
Glenn is also possible.
Oh, and Glenn. Yes, thank you. Glenn? He did both, but he put.
My thing,
put
I
Ledge
thought
first.
that people still have till Friday to go ahead and give you stuff, and you can go ahead and do it. You can go ahead and put me on. I'd actually rather not be the chair because I'd rather be able to be an agitator. But if you want me to be the chair, I would be happy to do it, but that would be my second choice.
That's your second choice. Okay, so.
Because,
Okay.
the chair, you have a different kind of role than what members get to have. And my preference would be to have the membership kind of role, but if you want, I'll do it.
Okay, then it comes down to Anita and Lydia. You guys, any thoughts?
I'd like to nominate Anita.
There you go. Okay. And Lisa, great. Good, thank you very much. That makes my job much easier. Wow, we're not off too bad.
Can I just clarify? So
Please.
Did everyone who said they want to be on it, are they on it? So the legislation one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people?
that true? You need the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering if everyone who said they wanted to be on one gets to be on it. So we have 6 people on ledge and 4 people on tech? Or are we trying to have a small group or more people? And, we hadn't talked about how many people. Doesn't matter.
In that count, did you have both of us on both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you please read out the name just to clarify?
So if Mary Lynn and I have the same, I have Anita, Glenn, Lydia, and potentially Ed on tech. Is that what you have? I have Anita, Lydia, Glenn, Lydia, and Ed.
This is Evan. I don't know if you can hear me.
Not very well. He's talking.
I have the technical working group. I have Anita, Lydia, Ed, and Glenn.
Yes.
Then for legislative, I have Lisa as the chair, Glenn, Kathy, Michelle, and Lydia. So that would be 5 on legislative, 4 on technical.
I have 6 on ledge. I have 6 on ledge. So we have, yeah, if we do it.
People who said 1 and 2.
Yeah. So Lisa,
So I don't have Ed twice on legislative. I can put him as well. So that's
Thank
6
you.
for legislative.
okay. Yes, that makes it. All right, we're moving on to oral communication. No, item number 8. Consideration of a roundtable support of a request by the City of Palo Alto of SFO for a noise monitor to be placed in Palo Alto. Possible actions could include the authorization of the roundtable for the roundtable chair to write a letter supporting Palo Alto's request, if suggested, approved by members. As a little bit of background, many, many months ago, I spoke both to Lydia and a member of the community, Darlene Yapley, about their desire to have a noise monitor, permanent or temporary, installed in Palo Alto. I felt that given the number of flights that procedures that you do have flying over the area with Oceanic, Surfer, and Bodega, I think that's right, that you deserved to have something there that would capture the noise. Because you have been impacted, this has been something that I've been aware of since Select Committee. So we talked about it. I did some further exploration. I appreciate Bert's input on this too. And I came back to you and explained that it would really be up to the city, any city actually, if they were interested in putting in a noise monitor, to commit to what it takes to meet the criterion for having a noise monitor. I'll let you fill us in on what you did, but it had to have come from the city. The city of Palo Alto did vote. I know the letter that I got was dated the very first week in January. I'm not sure when you voted that you would take the responsibilities for as a city for meeting the criteria. And so now it's my understanding that you would like me as the chair to write a letter supporting the installation of a noise monitor. I don't know whether it's permanent or temporary, because that's to be worked out with the FAA and the airport, SFO airport. For me to write the letter, I will need the roundtable's approval. And with that, I'd like Lydia to fill in the rest of the information.
So thank you. I appreciate the background that you provided. Although I do want to say that I'm a little bit puzzled and perplexed by this agenda item and the way that it's worded. However, I would like to provide some background. You know, San Francisco Airport, they own and manage their own noise monitors. And also today, and I've written my reports every time I attend one of the San Francisco Roundtable meetings, I do submit a report to the SCSC Roundtable at gmail.com. I don't know how many people gets it, but it does come out on the packet 3 or 4 days before the meeting. So today the airport is working with the San Francisco Roundtable to determine locations for new monitors, new permanent monitors. Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable is not included in this process, and we should be. We should be given the opportunity to be included in the discussions because many of our cities are actually affected by San Francisco airport noise, the noise that comes out of San Francisco. And I also feel appropriate that this committee, this roundtable, ask for the roundtable's inclusion in the noise monitor allocation process and have standing like the San Francisco Roundtable. I've submitted 3 letters, which are documented in the meeting packets over several months with my intention. And in all those letters, the request San Francisco to place monitors under San Francisco arrival and departure flight paths of procedures and associated vectoring, as well as provide adequate coverage regardless of county limits. I don't think I've not asked only for Palo Alto. I've asked for the entire community affected by San Francisco airport noise. And, you know, I want to ask the members here on this roundtable, wouldn't you be interested to be considered for a noise monitor besides us? You know, I mean, there are a number of communities at this roundtable that are affected. So, and that's the letter that I was asking for. That was the support that I was asking for from the roundtable here.
Bert, can you explain how the noise monitors that are provided through the SFO program are assigned to, and what the underlying requisite policy is?
Yes, ma'am. Up until recently, it was always the airport working with roundtable cities on where to go and place noise monitors. The noise abatement office handled ad hoc noise monitoring, so individual homeowner requests, some city requests. And as of recent, the roundtable decided that they wanted to be involved with the city requests for permanent portable, which basically means a portable monitor that appears once a quarter for 2 weeks at a time. It actually, under state Title 21 regulations, satisfies a permanent noise monitor. And so that means you can rotate your equipment around and do more. Permanent noise monitor, obviously, like a light pole, a telephone pole, whatever, it's a fixed site, constantly reporting. And we grew a little concerned initially because we heard some of the requests going quite far out. So we asked the FAA, having gone through a recent audit ourselves by the FAA, not fun, by the way, but we are appearing to pass with flying colors so far, which is good. And so we asked them, we said, in your documentation, you say within the local airport environs. And can you give us a definitive on that? So far, they're saying within the noise contour for a permanent site. We said, what about our portables? They said, you can use those as you see fit. And we said, okay, other than the telephone call, can we get written guidance? We'll get back to you. So we're in a holding pattern right now, waiting for the airport district office to reply back to us with that information. But as far as the portables go, we have 8. The roundtable will be working with where they go. And just so you know, the first 2 cities mentioned have not been approved by the roundtable, but mentioned by the initial subcommittee meeting were Palo Alto and East Palo Alto.
Speak about the roundtable. You're speaking about the San Francisco roundtable.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I should have clarified.
And with the portables, for them to be recognized as valid, do they have to meet the same standards that, or most of the same standards that the permanent ones do in terms of location, maintenance, city's participation, all of that sort of thing? What are the criterion?
For the portables, the
Criteria.
only real difference, I mean, the hardware in the suitcase itself, if you pulled the actual unit out itself and pulled one out of a permanent site, it's the same thing. So both are the same units, same type of microphones, and they both get processed through our system the same way. The real difference with the portable is that instead of on a 23-foot mast, it's on a 6 to 8 foot tripod.
And so how is that location determined for the best optimal results?
Sorry about that. I also should have mentioned the calibrations are done for the entire system that we have annually to make sure it stays within the Type 1 certification. All of them under our maintenance plan, so they're constantly maintained the same. Now, for your other question, we typically want to be as far away from any object as it is tall. So if a building is 23 feet tall, you want to be at least 23 feet away from it. A tree, same things, so you can have a clear view of the sky and receive the noise. And that's basically the way all of them work.
And you talked about maintenance. Who maintains them once they're in there for the period of time?
Our current contract is with Brule & Care. It's a Danish company.
And is that something that you cover or the cities are expected to cover?
We have that covered under our contract.
Are there any costs to the cities themselves?
Not at this time, no, and I don't believe there will be.
And again, I may have missed it. How long are they there?
Typically 2 weeks at a time.
2 weeks at a time. Can a city request an extension or a revisit?
You can, but if it's going to be on the calendar that the Roundtable sets up, it'll probably have to rotate. I anticipate that our deployments will increase.
And that is with, outside of the noise corridor, but that's San Francisco Roundtable that will be approving
The San
those?
Francisco Roundtable wanted to handle the city requests.
All
through
cities'
their-
requests,
through
even
their
Santa Clara,
the
Santa Cruz
subcommittee.
County.
The only exception to that one is the Santa Cruz County and somewhat Santa Clara. And the reason for that, I made a obligation of the airport, at the airport director at the time, John Martin's approval, for the FAA and the cities that wished, receive the data that was monitored. Originally, we monitored in 5 locations, from Santa Cruz all the way up to the, I believe it was Los Gatos border, up in the hills. So we went from lower terrain to higher terrain along the surfer path. We turned that data over to the FAA and those that wanted it. We have obligated to, again, go back to monitor surfer. We'll monitor the new route of the Big Sur once it's announced and prior to the move over. And then we'll monitor it once the move over has occurred. And then we'll monitor the surfer once the flights are gone from that.
So for clarity, that's already been assigned, those areas,
We
for
will-
Big Sur?
Going back to the same, well, no. As far as the final on that one, it's not been put out in the IFP gateway yet, to my knowledge, and so it's not totally set in stone. The general routing is going to be the old Big Sur routing.
So there will not be anything for Santa Cruz, let's say, for baseline for them once the route transitions. So nothing is going at this point to be placed in Santa Cruz to measure baseline so that they would have that information should they want it once the BSR goes in.
I believe I
as a
mentioned
comparison.
we plan to go there before the flights move
That's what
to
I-
Big Sur. So there will be a baseline.
That was the clarity.
I wanted
was
to be
asking
sure
for.
that we had baseline.
Okay, good. Lydia, does that provide any assurance to you? Any other comments that you'd like to make, given what my understanding was when I first talked to you and a community member, that that I was just looking at Palo Alto. I thought that was the request. I see you are looking for something larger. Do you feel that what you're hearing from Bert is answering that in any way?
Well, I've heard Bert speak about this many times at the San Francisco Roundtable because that's been brought up time and time again. The thing is, with some of our communities at the edge of, at the boundaries of San Mateo and Santa Clara, we're Santa Clara, but we're at the very boundary. And for many of us, we have 2 or 3 or 4 flight paths that go over our cities. And I think that, you know, just having a temporary 2-week and then having you come back again, I mean, I think the temporary one that you set up for us, which the chair had mentioned, I believe it took some time to get it in. And I don't know, you know, how much of the measurement it actually took for whichever flight that we were trying to measure, whichever flight path that we're trying to measure. So we're just trying to make sure that we're capturing everything. And if anything, I think that, you know, the contours, FAA needs to kind of consider that the contours need to kind of go further a little bit if they're going to be increasing all their flights to the degree that they are. And you know, with all the vectoring, that's a huge concern, and we need to measure those. So hence my request for the monitors. And I'd like to see permanent monitors in some of the cities that is affected by these kind of negative impacts, especially noise.
I've seen that Santa Clara and Sunnyvale have done them. We have 5 minutes left on the amount of room time that we have. Glenn, I see you are up to speaking. If you can do it in a minute, I've got to put a timer on you.
What I would suggest, you know, after we hear public hearing, I'd be willing to make a motion that we authorize the chair to write an advocacy letter for Palo Alto, Santa Cruz, you know, flight path area, maybe San Mateo flight path area, because there's 2 things. Let's advocate to say, here, go ahead and put the air noises. How they go ahead and implement it, that's a different story. But our position is, I would say, let's go ahead and advocate. But I would also say, for these cities, if you really want stuff, that's what we did in Sunnyvale. I put an RFP out. It's been put in place. It's now consummated, and we're going to be getting permanent monitors that are put in our city, and we're going to be able to have data. That's what I would suggest cities do if you really care about it.
What I heard was, though, that monitors are going into Santa Cruz. So I'm not sure that that would be something that, okay. Kathy?
Yeah, I would second, I'd be happy to second what Glenn is proposing. I think it is important that we advocate on behalf of our fellow roundtable member here. Santa Clara is fortunate that we have, I think, about 5 noise monitors that were installed by San Jose, and they're monitored by WebTrack, or you can go onto WebTrack and, you know, follow the just how frequently planes are taking off, the noise level, I mean, all kinds of information. And then we also installed our own from Wilson. iRig is another acoustical company that has also been a nice backup to what we're getting. But I totally advocate, I think a permanent monitor would be wonderful, and because it has helped us a lot. Thank you.
Michelle?
I would echo say that if you are, I support the Madam Mayor to write a letter and advocacy, not only just including the Palo Alto, but definitely consider if it's not all cities, definitely Los Altos Hill. We have a few residents has been constantly reporting that they've been doing the noise measuring 24/7 sometimes. So this will really help.
Okay, I need some clarification.
The installation.
No, not from you. Okay, from Steve, given the fact that what is on the agenda is consideration of noise monitors for Palo Alto alone, can we?
Yeah, I think we're beginning to expand beyond what this agenda item
Yes.
is. Bert, from a timing standpoint, how urgent is this? Is this something that can come back at the next meeting with a more broad request to the San Francisco Roundtable?
I don't see a reason why not.
Okay, then, Madam Chair, I would recommend that this be basically tabled for the time being, and then this request be recast for the next meeting, so that it's a broader request to cover all the aspects of what we're talked about here.
Anita wants to speak.
I'm not sure tabled is what we want to do here. I think we want to continue and modify the item.
Okay. That works.
To make it broader.
I
It's
agree.
continued to a date certain, so would be our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Does she need a second for that? Thank you.
Got it.
Okay.
Carolyn?
Yes.
I am concerned that the timing, 2 months off, may leave us out of the loop in terms of timing
I
in Santa
think,
Cruz.
given the fact that Bert has indicated that they will put them in at the proper time that is prior to the transition, that you are covered.
Follow-up.
And follow-up would be good. Yeah. Okay. Do we need to have input, public input? We have 2 cards.
Yes, we should have that before we vote.
Yes. Darlene and Mark. That's Darlene Yapley and Mark Schul.
There is some urgency. The first San Francisco Roundtable ad hoc meeting on monitors met on February 5th. We did not come. Nobody here came. Lydia didn't come because guess what? We're not on the San Francisco Roundtable. So there was no notification. They missed the public notification because they're changing staff. But I think one of the points is we don't have standing to be included. So maybe you don't, I think there's some urgency to SFO and to the, I guess it's the SFO, they own the monitors, that we are equivalent standing for this roundtable with the San Francisco Roundtable to receive monitors, or to be considered for monitors for cities that are interested. There is urgency, everybody. They already met once.
Mark.
Yes, I think just a little bit of background, and I could have my own clock, thanks. So the importance of the monitor, and part of the reason that Palo Alto requested this is there is a very extensive program that involves Palo Alto citizens in Stanford, which is now partially being funded by the FAA and NASA, which is, it's called the MONA project. And it has built models for mapping the traffic real time, to show the procedures, to basically correlate those real time with noise models, et cetera. It's a very, very impressive program. Now, one of the things that has been required is the ability to calibrate our monitors, which equal basically what the B and K monitors are. They're about $1,000 a person, with these $30,000 B and K. And so there is a real science reason to have this monitor full-time now, so that basically this project, which is really, really impressive, various people have seen it, including, I think, the regional director herself has seen this, as well as major other people in the FAA. So that's kind of the reason we'd really like, one of the reasons we'd really like to have it. The second thing I would say is there's really only, as Bert said, as part of, there's only 4 cities that actually qualify for monitors based on FAA rules. The rest is fairly discretional, and whatever the SFO can argue would be an appropriate use of FAA funding. Now, currently, that's based on, what county you're in, and there's a whole other story as to why that is and why it shouldn't be. But be that as it may, it really ought to be based on impact and overflights and how much activity you have, not basic. And one of the things is, most of the San Mateo County monitors get like 4 hits a day. I mean, they get nothing. They're just there. They were given out like Oprah gives out cars. You know, you get one, you get one, you get one, you get one. And I think it really needs to be, say, hey, this should be based on, do you have traffic or not? Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. We actually are supposed to be out of here by now. Given the input that you have just given us and a little bit of a change, initially what was agendized here was a letter on behalf of the chair for Palo Alto. Is there any motion to make that motion so that a letter would be written? We would talk about the other ones at another time.
So I'd move that one, the item that's on the agenda, to support Palo Alto, and then to agendize to go ahead and do the rest of the discussion.
And I think it'd be in order to say that the chair in the initial letter, I want to second that, but that in that letter you indicate that the roundtable is going to consider further requests that may come forward
That
to
was already made.
SFO.
Yes. So, Is that okay, Steve? Do you have any comment?
My comment was Anita made a motion, it was seconded by Glenn and Lydia almost simultaneously, to continue this item and add to it at the next meeting.
So I would like to amend my motion, and I will amend my motion to make it a two-part motion that we approve the item as on this agenda with the note that the chair would also indicate that the roundtable, our roundtable, is going to take this matter up for possible further requests to the SFO folks, and that we then agendize at the next meeting that item for a possible broader look. So I'll amend my motion. Will you?
And I'll second your amendment.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? None. Passes unanimously. Given the fact we are now 6 minutes over, I have to ask Brown Act information, Steve. We have speakers here, but we do not have a space to have them speak in. So I will have to do what?
That's a great question. Well, and I don't know the answer to that, Madam Chair. Sort of off the top of my head, and I look for others, you could.
Well, can you? No. I have to have, thank you. Okay, you are limited to a minute now. Greg Hiver. You were here, you're gone. Leslie Tierra.
So I just want to say, moving Surfer to BSR is not the answer. BSR is a larger, more populated area. And the SLV Valley, the San Lorenzo Valley, needs a monitor there, as well as Santa Cruz, because the noise bounces off, it reverberates off the walls there. So BSR is more highly populated. You're moving to a larger community. It also ecologically has 14 state parks. Surfer has 1. My heart goes out to everybody in the Surfer, but the BSR is not the old route under Next Gen. Last year, it was moved accidentally for 6 weeks to BSR. I heard in one afternoon during the Surfer route right now, I heard no planes. One afternoon there, 8 planes in an hour, loud enough to rattle windows. 3 at 1:30, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, waking me up even though I have earplugs. BSR is not the answer.
Thank you. Mark Schul, did you have, Skip, thank you very much. Darlene Yapley. Robert Holbrook, and then Jennifer.
Thank you for posting the FAA status tracking sheet. At the last meeting, timestamp 2/24/18, Chairperson Bernard confirmed that a letter had been sent to the FAA for a BSR update. I did not see the letter in the matrix, nor did I see the letter posted. So if a letter went out to the FAA requesting for a Big Sur overlay update, can you please post that?
And it could not be sent out because it had not been agendized.
Okay, so what I would like to then ask is that it get agendized so that it can be sent out.
It was on this agenda. We just voted to have me write the letter.
Wow, at the last meeting, actually 2 meetings ago when we discussed the work plan, you asked Sky, and Sky said they would try to come in February. And then at the last meeting, he was asked again, and he said he would try to come in February. So I'm confused about the agendized. I think we need to
talk to you afterwards.
Okay, well, we need to tighten this up is what I would say, because it's very frustrating. I know that there's a lot of people that came here thinking that that was going to be on the agenda. So this is why we need that matrix, which is, I think you need to leave knowing it's not being
Thank
done.
you. Jennifer, excuse me, Joseph.
Hi, thank you to all the work that has been done on noise monitors. This is a question for FAA again. All of these scientific projects that are happening, they need to be useful to us here in the community. And in the packet, a lot of the statements from Ms. Gervin said that the FAA doesn't have to do any noise analysis, that they don't have any plans to do it. But that is the core issue. It's noise. It's not number of planes on a track. It's what those lines represent on the ground. So I would like to please channel this question to Ms. Gervin, which is that in order to evaluate and for the public to have useful input into this whole process, we need those noise maps. And I conclude with what I always say, which is noise maps, noise maps, noise maps, but they must come from the FAA. They can also come from others, but we need the FAA on it. Thank you.
Joseph. And then Jennifer T.
Yeah, I've known you've heard these before, time and time again, about the Big Sur ground track. Please, it's been years and years and years and years. We've been suffering for this for so long. There's always one more analysis, one more set of monitors. This was started in an underhanded way. It was announced, put in that little magazine or something they did. Didn't move the flights for 6 months, so there could be no formal opposition. It's been heck. It's been hell. Please. It's always one more excuse, one more thing to be done. We'll finally get it out there. It seems like more bad faith after bad faith after bad faith after bad faith after bad faith is how it seems. If it hasn't, I'm sorry, but that's how it seems. Can someone please, please, please just move it back? Please.
Thank you very much.
It is the answer, ma'am.
No,
it
excuse
is
me.
for us.
That's it. That's it. That's the end. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wants to speak at this time? Jennifer, Robert, okay. Sorry.
In response to questions from the chair, Ms. Gervin wrote, "You have not identified any error in the methodology used to establish DNL as a metric, nor provided any alternative analysis to establish that the use of DNL somehow understates or misses noise impacts of this project." My thoughts turn to the letter from Boom Supersonic to the FAA, which said, "Even an action that exposes a test area to 28,835 Concorde-level sonic booms per year would fail to be significant under the FAA's DNL standard. Perhaps that somehow misses noise impacts." We also have 10 million noise complaints logged by SFO and the need for this roundtable. Congress has been asking the FAA for alternatives to DNL for years. In 2018, a law was passed requiring them to evaluate alternative metrics to the DNL standard not later than 1 year after the date of passage. It's been 16 months. It would be a good idea to get an update on where the FAA stands on this now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'd just like to thank those members who have decided to join as members of the Legislative Committee and technical committees. I appreciate it, and I look forward to the work of those committees and to work with them. Thank you very much for those who volunteered.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to move on to member discussion and hope that we have discussed everything. There is one thing that I would like to mention under membership discussion, and that is a big thank you to Lisa Matichek for serving as my vice chair this past year. Thank you. And secondly, we had hoped to have information on BSR on this record at this meeting, and I believe Favi has an announcement or a statement to make, not an announcement.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, just a couple of things as far. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. As far as SURFR is concerned, we continue in ongoing and continuous communications with our congressional offices, representatives that are here. I also want to mention that Tamara Swan, the Deputy Regional Administrator, is going to be joining the task. She's going to be attending this roundtable. We are rotating. I'll see some of you at San Francisco. I hear a lot of you are there. And also, we are changing the time requirement for submitting questions to us. If you please get those to us within at least a 45-day limit. We are finding that there is a lot of information requests out there. We're getting even more. There's roundtables that are considering to form. The resources are just very spread thin. And I just want to assure you that as far as the letter is concerned that we sent you on PIRAT and the presentation, it is the same team that is working on both those. So if there are inconsistencies, we will address them for clarification. So we would like, if you can follow up with a new set of questions so that we can address those. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This means...
I'm sorry, we have a 5:30 plane to catch, so we'll be here and listen, but if we run off, I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this puts more pressure on us to be sure that at the meetings, if we don't hear them, we turn around our questions really fast, and I will write the letters as fast as I can get them out in connection with ESA.
If that time is being stretched to 45 days, then the comment period of 60 days should also be extended.
I hear you. I hear you. Is there any other comment? Okay, we are now at number, well, I don't, Jennifer, you are the only one that has turned something in. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now at number 11, review of roundtable actions taken.
And in the interest of time, Madam Chair, may we just put that in the meeting recap?
That would be
Thank you.
great. Thank you very much. Are we adjourned?
Yes.
Everyone is agreed. Okay, thank you.